Good evening, listeners. Welcome to episode 60, can you believe, of the 2P's in a podcast. Tonight, as always, we shall go on to the hobby desk. So we talk about what we've been doing and our plans looking forward into 2021. Ben is very distinct with his plan and knows what's going on. I have no real clue, and we'll probably just get randomly excited and buy things and sell them throughout the year. We'll go into the galaxy of war, and again, and the same in the mortal realms tonight. We're going to reflect a bit on the things we think we've seen that were awesome and what we'd like to see. And we find out that basically, if there isn't Khorne Berserkers, there will be pain. Then into the community, where we do our usual shout outs to some of the awesome stuff we've seen. And finally into the wilds, which is a long ramble this evening. But it's a lot about parenting and hobbying at the same time, and making sure that you don't inadvertently feed paint to the baby and put milk on your models. It's very important. Don't go there. Ben, are you ready?
Yeah, why not?
Born ready. Prediction? Pain.
Hi guys, and welcome to episode 60's Hobby Desk. A bit excited that we've reached episode 60 without falling apart and giving up. It's still here.
or at least we've managed to give the impression we've not fallen apart and given up at any point.
And it's the end of 2020, last episode. So it's kind of numbers all come together.
What a shame 2020 is over.
I know.
Almost.
Good riddance. That's all I could say to that. So, as usual, we're going to go through our little adventures on the hobby desk over the last 2 weeks. Last time we were joined with Fabulous Miles, and we spoke about what we've been up to at that point. So, do you want to start first today, Dan, or should I go first?
You crack on.
Okay. I suppose it's the same old kind of story, isn't it, with when you're doing big projects? But what I've been up to is still working on my Space Wolves, and I feel like I'm at a really exciting point with them because I did this big batch paint, and as I explained to like a dozen times, if I'm doing a really big batch of models that take a long time, like the Space Wolves, I tend to take them up into the point where I can't stand looking at them anymore. And then individually pick off squads and finish them off. And I'm at the point now where pretty much all of them are at the point where the only thing that needs to happen that isn't the very last highlight is the Fenris Grey sort of first edge highlight. So I tend to do a sort of zenithal kind of area shade on things with the Russ over the top of what I have this time. I used the Space Wolf Grey contrast paint to get the recesses, the darker parts of it, and then the Rust Grey, and then I used a Fenrisian Grey air paint to sort of do a more kind of zenithy bit highlight. There's a really good term for this that painters use, and I can't remember it, but other than anything, but area shading, where you get the light at the top of the areas, and then I do a larger Fenrisian Grey with the normal paint, because I find that's a little bit brighter than the air paint. The air paint is a bit more muted, and then the blue horror is the last edge highlight. So once I've done the Fenrisian Grey highlight on all of them, they'll be really close then, because that takes a long time, about 45 minutes per model.
Yeah.
Mainly, actually, probably only takes about half an hour model, but realistically, the first one takes me 20 minutes. The second one takes me half an hour. The third one takes me 35 minutes. Then it gets longer and longer and longer because I get distracted by Facebook and various other things, and it just becomes a pain. But once that's done, then I'll start knocking them off real quick, I think. So, I mean, I think about 2 days worth of painting for each squad, and I've got 4 squads left to do. And by 2 days, I mean about an 8-hour free day, so a weekend day. So 2 evenings, something like that. So I'm quite excited about how close I am to finishing them. And then when I've done that, that will be the sort of infantry of the company, like the core infantry of the company done then for Ragnar's pre-Primaris company.
They are looking fantastic. I've said that
bud.
to you, obviously, in the lead up, because I know you were a little bothered by the fact that you felt like your output, you hadn't done a lot.
I feel my output this year has been terrible. But
I think you've really got to take away the quality of what you're putting out. And it's a totally different year. So last year you were doing a lot of speed painting projects or quicker projects.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there isn't much that's going to be as time consuming as Edge highlighting Space Marine power armor to the standard that you're doing it. Yeah. So I know you did some of your Oryx last year, and they look great, but it's a totally different thing than Edge highlighting all that power armor. So, and you built a flipping metric ton of stuff.
Yeah, and frustratingly, still got loads to build, which is just painful. But we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. And the other thing I did is, so I finished 2 squads over the last 2 weeks. So the first squad was that Space Wolf Grey Hunter squad that I painted right back when I got back in the hobby after I finished my beastings in hospital when I was a junior doctor. And I found a little bit of time, and I just moved house, and I got them out and done those. And they got the upgrade treatment, so they got all the extra highlighting done. The colours I changed a few, and I'm really happy with how they turned out in the end, actually, because they were looking really old and didn't fit with the army at all. And it would have been really odd having one squad that looked that much different from the others, because I learned so much in that first year I got back into the hobby after the gap. So I think I'm really happy with where they are. And then the first squad of the ones that I've just done from scratch this time were finished. So I suppose I finished 20 Grey Hunters in the last 2 weeks is a nice way of looking at it. But and also did all the green stuff work on the assault intercessors, which I really enjoyed. So I tried using the blue stuff. I haven't talked about this, but where you mold like little bits that you want to use, so like the Space Wolf skull, so icons, and I didn't really get on with it. I don't think I couldn't get it to look as I wanted it to look, which frustrated me, because then I ended up sculpting it and not pissing around with it, and then I may as well not bothered doing the cast in the first place. So I kind of haven't used those as much as I hoped I would do, because I wanted for my squads to just be able to bang out a couple of wolf skull like emblems and stick them on knees and have done with it, but it didn't work out like that. But
I find it's I've not, hopefully somebody's listening that's had more experience, but when I used it, excuse me guys, as you know, Ben is a GP and I work for Royal Mail, and it is a tiring time. So I found that you had to have quite a lot of pressure on to the stuff to get it to conform to what you'd sculpted.
Yeah.
And then when I tried to cast off it with like green stuff, I just couldn't get it to work. I in the end I had to do it with resin, like a resin pour. So yeah.
I think I've got it to work. It's just little things like so if you get like a wolf skull from the back of a power fist, which is where the best one I found, the little kind of wolf skull emblems, that's quite a flat surface. And if you want to put it on a knee, you then have to bend the back of the surface. So you can't just wait for it to dry and stick it on, really.
No.
you've got to sort of put it on and mold it around. And by the time you smooth the edges around, you kind of distorted it enough that then you have to resculpt some of it, and then you think, well, what was the point? May as well have just stuck it on and done it, because I spent the best part of an evening practicing how to do wolf skull heads anyway. So, and it's just more practice. And what I did end up doing was I didn't really feel like I had a lot of time to sit and sculpt like fur on units as much as I'd like to have done, like on a character model, for example. So I used the press mold for a few of the wolf pelts, and then faffed around with it afterwards to get it to how it wanted it to look. And I find that like a lot faster. I don't think it looked quite as good as the one I sculpted myself, but actually when it's hanging between the legs, the way I sculpt it doesn't work. You need something to push against to sort of, get it to look right. So actually sort of pressing it on and then putting it on and then fiddling with it was quite a much faster way of doing it. Otherwise, what I end up doing is sculpting like a back plate and then sculpting the fur on top of that, letting it dry, and then sculpting the fur on top of that, which takes just longer. But yeah, I'm quite happy. I'm really happy with those. For squad, they only took a couple of evenings to get to that level, and realistically, I think 4 hours is all I'm willing to spend upgrading a squad of Primaris, really.
That's a great result, though, for 4 hours work.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy with it. Yeah, I'm getting faster with some things too now, which is really like pleasing. Like the hair, that I find with hair, I get it right or I don't. So if I get it wrong, then I think sometimes it's better to just let it cure, rip it off, and start again. Because if you've got it wrong, trying to fix it, you just end up getting yourself in a mess. But I mean, you were there with me for the epic session of green stuffing where nothing was going right, and it is worth saying that I green stuff is one of those things I think that I've learned that some days you sit down to do it, and I can get nothing wrong. I feel like king of the world doing it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's turned out really well. Oh, that's perfect. I feel great. And then sometimes I'll sit down and it's basically 4 hours of continual swearing.
Yeah, it was creative in a different kind of way, that session.
Yeah. And I spent the best part of 2 hours putting a leather strapping on a melter gun because it just was not behaving itself, or one of the eradicators. Painful, really painful. So I think it's a good reminder. I think green stuff has a good way of sort of coming back and reminding you that you've got a long way to go before it's just you can just do it. And there's so many variables that you don't naturally take into account when you're starting out, I suppose. But I'm really excited about where they are. And the other thing I've been doing over the last couple of days is planning for 2021, because I went into 2020 in a bit of a pickle because I just moved house. I'd spent most of December and January just packing up my stuff to move in an organised fashion, so it was relatively accessible, which wasted January. But in some ways it wasn't wasted, because then part of this year I spent like cataloguing everything I had. I've literally written down every model and every book that I've had, because it got to the point where I was rediscovering things every time I opened a box, and I'd be like, oh God, I don't remember buying them. When did I buy that? Or I'd think, oh, I've got that book, and then I didn't have that book. So it I suppose when you've been collecting for the best part of 30 years, that can end up happening. But that irritates my brain a little bit. So I sat down and catalogued it. So what I've been trying to do for this year is come up with, and this is going to sound really ridiculous, but a 5-year plan where I've worked out the core things that I really want to get done, and I've worked those in, and then I worked out the other projects or left gaps for new projects around those.
Mm.
So whatever happens over the 5 years, those core projects will get done, which feels like a long time. And it was a bit depressing, sort of putting the Dragon Princes in year 5, having just built them this year. Seems like a long time in the future, but I think that's going to have to be how it's going to be. Otherwise, I won't get to do any current hobby, and I'll just end up sort of doing old hobby. And as much as I'd love to do that and be caught up, it's just a bit overwhelming. And I've probably allocated myself more time than I need, because I've really had to make some big decisions I can't paint all my armies the same way I paint my Space Wolves. I just can't do it. It breaks me a little bit. Because I don't think about armies in a small way. I don't. No. It's ridiculous. I'm absolutely absurd about things. So, like my Exorcist army was going to start off as a small force for Obscura. It's now a company strength force in my head to use up all of my Space Marine bits, which is just absolutely ludicrous. But it's one of those things where I think, I think with the Exorcist, I came up with a scheme where I can do one Marine in 20 minutes, half an hour, especially if I had the transfers. So I can do a squad easily, maybe 20 Marines in a week if I really went for it. So what I've been looking at the projects that I've got, like, for example, the High Elves. I'd love to be able to sit down and paint the High Elves so they look like the heavy metal High Elves. From when I started collecting, all those really crisp whites and perfectly blended highlights on. I literally have nearly 500 of them. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Otherwise, I'll be painting elves for stars will come and die before I finish that army if I do it that way. So I've been speaking to Miles about little legend about working out. Bouncing ideas off him about how to do them quickly, like really quickly, so I can do like maybe a 30-man unit in a week, 2 weeks, using airbrushing, washing, glazing, working in a kind of grimdark way to create a realistic looking unit that looks absolutely ace on the table, but when you pick it up, you don't get those little extra details, because otherwise it's just going to break me, I think. And I need to change that way of thinking in my head, and I need to change the way I paint armies so that, like, for example, a really good example is I definitely do my goblins and my orcs in a different way now. The orcs and goblins that I did, not my Iron Jaws, the other ones, because I probably utilise the airbrush a lot more, and I definitely utilise oils and enamels a lot more, and I would have been able to do twice as many in the time that it took me to do them, easily twice as many. So there's been lots of thinking, lots of planning.
I think it's really good idea, to be honest, because it allows you to enjoy current stuff as well, because often there can be that guilt, I suppose, and worry and concern about buying something new when you've already got loads to do. And that's a shame, really, because it dampens the spirits a bit on all the cool new stuff. And so I think by having it planned out, I think that's a great idea. The
backbone of it is my starters kit project. Getting the starters kits done, because they form an awful lot of the bulk of what I've got sitting around, to be perfectly honest. Like the majority of the orcs sat in that box over there are the 2nd edition starters kit and Black Reach.
Yeah.
Realistically, there's one or two other models in there, like the ones Gazgul Thracker and the knobs that came with him and the beast, the Wolf and the Beast. That little bits extra that you accidentally pick up because you're picking up Ragnar Blackmane.
And Ragnar Blackmane comes with an entire box set.
yeah. But it's I think I've really enjoyed planning it. And actually, I've been talking to Jo because Jo's a really good painter, and we do sit down and hobby once a week together. She does various things, but she's actually quite keen to help me get through my Lord of the Rings backlog.
Mm.
So I'm going to be sitting down and painting massive regiments of goblins with her on a Monday night, doing that together, which I think will be really cool. I'm quite excited about that. Using like really simple techniques to just get those big blocks of like Moran and Orcs done. So no faffing around, so that they're just done.
I think Lord of the Rings does lend itself, especially the Orcs, to those sort of quick schemes. They're smaller for a start. There's less surface area to worry about. Certainly less flat areas.
Yeah, and I'm not really like massively in need of them all being like edge highlighted and little details done. Like the goblins, I'm quite happy with just sort of block colouring them out, and then sticking an enamel wash over them. Rubbing off the surface, and ta-da! Literally as simple as that. I might do like a cheat step at the start by spraying them black and then zenithing with white through the airbrush, or maybe even the rattle can, so you get that kind of area, highlight across the top of them naturally, and then use like the contrast paints to block them out. Bang an enamel wash on, and clean the raised areas off of bit. I reckon you've got that done. And that's what I'm going to have to start thinking like with a lot of the armies, because there's just such a backlog, and I've talked about it so many times and people must get sick of hearing it, but I'm hoping that the planning of these armies is useful to people, because like, for example, today I was looking at fast ways of doing Dark Angels and came up with some really cool ideas to do the Dark Vengeance box set. Which is actually a bit of a pain in the ass, that box set, because there's quite a lot of characters, but not only that, there's 3 different types of armor color, so you can't just stick the Terminators, the bikes, and the squad and airbrush the whole lot, in green, and then start. You got to do one bone, one black, one green. So it's a bit of a pickle. God bless them. Love the Dark Angels. Thank you. I always knew they'd come back and kick me in the teeth one day. But, it's been a good project to do in my mind, because I've been quite disappointed with this year, the number of models I've got painted. I don't feel like I've even scratched my backlog, really. I really hoped to have got those Space Wolves done by the end of the year, but it's just not happened. But like you said, there's been lots of positives, lots of other sort of hidden hobby in the background, like the assembling and all that kind of stuff, that sometimes for some reason you just don't count assembling stuff as hobby, do you? Like it's like the aggravating preamble to getting on with it.
Yeah. I don't think as either, I don't think you can dismiss the fact that you've chosen to dedicate a chunk of your time to your health. And I think that's a really healthy thing to discuss as part of the hobby, because actually a lot of us spend a lot of time sitting down and just painting and what have you. And that's not true of everyone. Obviously, there's lots of people that are very conscious of their health in the hobby. But I think overall, as a positive to how you will feel and how engaged you will feel and how much more awake you will feel, it's got to be a good thing that you've taken that time to put towards you.
Yeah, I mean, that has taken a huge chunk out of my painting time, because what I've done this year is basically the couch to 5K. I haven't really spoken about this on the podcast at all, to be honest, but I was quite unwell at the start of the year. Quite seriously unwell in some ways. So my blood pressure was so high that I nearly got admitted to the hospital as an emergency. it was only the fact that I was in the practice when it got sorted out and they dealt with it there and then, that I didn't need to do that. But then I spent 2 weeks basically unable to do anything because I felt so unwell and I had such an awful headache. But out of that, and then the coronavirus rearing its ugly head, I did come to realise that I needed to do something about sort of my general health. I'm pretty sure my blood pressure has a lot to do with stress, but the weight and inactivity can't have been all that positive impact on it. But what I've done is I've got up in the morning, pretty much every morning, and done some form of cardio, which has been the Couch to 5K, which I was really chuffed to finish that a couple of months ago. And now I'm on the 5K to 10K and I'm halfway through that. So I'm on regularly running sort of 4.5, 5K now, 4 times a week. So I'm super chuffed about that. But what that means is to get up in the morning at 6:30 and go for a run, I have to go to bed at sort of 11 o'clock. Whereas you all know as well as I do that I used to be up until 1 o'clock in the morning painting very regularly. So, I've lost about 2 hours a day, realistically, of painting time, which is a lot. So it's about 10 hours a week, really. But I think that was a worthwhile swap. Definitely. 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So overall, quite a positive story, really.
Yeah, it is. I think overall, looking back on 2020, it has been a really weird year. So there's some really big positives, like I've lost 4.5 stone. I can now run where I couldn't run really at all. I have done like loads of sort of the aggravating rubbish part of the hobby, like organising myself and building a shed to move into, which is that's not worth remembering because that's pretty much there now. By the end of January, I should have moved in and for the first time in my life have a gaming table in my house, which will be immense for me. But at the same time, like you said, because of the projects I've done, I haven't had the painting output that I've had in the last 2 years, and I find that a bit of a grumpy. And it's been a really unsocial year for the hobby, the most unsocial year of the hobby like ever. Apart from Zoom painting sessions, which have become pretty standard affair now. So yeah, it's been a bit of a year of two halves, hasn't it? Or not two halves, but two sides to it. If I think, from my perspective, I kind of, and work has been awful, but there's been loads of positives. I've tried to make positives out of it. I've really battled to make positives out of it. Otherwise, I would have just melted away this year into misery, I think. Yeah. Talking about misery, Mr. Postman at Christmas.
I'm not miserable about that.
After lockdown, with the Parcel Fest 2020.
It's all right. I'd rather be busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thing is, it's the age-old sort of difference between sort of pressure and stress, isn't it? So, it's fine while it's still achievable.
Yeah.
It's when it tips over that. But to be fair, the team I'm working with at the moment, in the office I run, are just brilliant. They're really good and they're really engaged. And when you think that they have been key workers, so they have worked throughout the pandemic, they've not just been going to work, but seen the sort of change in what they have to do every day, where letters have dropped, but parcels are through the roof and the volumetrics on parcels are much tougher to deal with. They're coming in early every day. They're doing longer days every single day anyway. Then we hit peak and it's got really busy. Christmas peak. it's got busier and busier and busier. And yet, this week, when I said to them yesterday, so I've got 22 staff in my team, I said to them that, we needed another big push. Really appreciated that it was a big ask, but I needed some people to work Sunday. 8 of them, so nearly 40% said, yeah, we'll come in with you and do it. And that's after all of that this year. So yeah. I have to say, like, and obviously, I know it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating when you think something's gone missing or it hasn't turned up, but I still see people bitching that they sent a letter, 2 weeks ago and it hasn't come yet. A single letter in the whole network. And I just think, you know what? We've had people in Bristol, well, all over the postal service, in hospital with COVID. We've been dealing with social distancing for so long now. And I know we're not the only ones. And I know, obviously, it's really harsh on like you guys in the NHS. But I just think I just get a bit irate now, as you can tell. I'm so damn proud of my team. They do such a good job. And bear in mind also, managerially, at least, Royal Mail is cutting 2,000 managerial jobs. So we're doing all of this as a managerial team without, I don't know what job I will be doing. I'm pretty confident I'll have one in the new year because they've got to have somebody. So I don't know how that's kind of happened. It's a hobby podcast, but I think I just feel very passionate about it. And I'm like,
it's the end of the year episode. It is, I think, a lot about reflecting on the year from a personal perspective too.
Yeah.
Because it has massively impacted our hobby.
Yeah, of course.
And it's massively impacted everyone's hobby. But
yeah, it's interesting actually, isn't it? It's very much. It's an interesting tale depending on where you came down. So, like, some people's output has gone through the roof because of furlough, whereas other people's output is got smashed apart because of furlough. I know I laughed a lot, and I'm really chuffed for people that got to get a lot done, but I had to isolate a couple of times. Believe me, when you have to isolate and you have young children, you do not get more done.
No, you do not.
You do not get more done. So, and actually, it's interesting as well because, we said we would talk a bit about this in this podcast, and we will. I think in the wilds, probably more focused. But, the challenge that being cooped up inside with children brings, not just with children, I appreciate other things, but we said we'd talk specifically about with kids, the challenge it brings and the mental challenge as well on you and your relationship and the people you live in with, that can all have an impact, because actually that downtime in the evenings where you do your painting, if it's the evenings, or in the day when you do it, if you can't have that because it's too busy or you're too tired, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. It's kind of like it gets into a spiral, doesn't it? So it's been a really tough year for loads of people, loads of people. But that being said, for all that, I'm not miserable with work. I love it. It's a real sense of satisfaction as well. I make my team, incidentally, I do make my team bacon rolls every Saturday. And it's got to the point, I did it, I started it at the beginning of November because it was getting real busy. And I was like, right, you guys are working your socks off, so I'll make bacon rolls every Saturday. I've had 2 Saturdays where I haven't been in work, 3 actually. One of them, I was there the Friday before, so I made bacon rolls on the Friday. The other two, I've had cover managers in, and there's such a sense of like excitement over the bacon roll Saturday that both those cover managers have ended up, they actually did sausage baps. So one was covering me for a week because I was on annual leave. And even I bugged him so much that on Saturday he got in and they were like, "What are you doing?" And he'd been up since like 4 cooking sausages and he was hanging, but he made them sausage. And then the week just gone, I was in another office and the guy covering me ended up doing the same thing. They've like really got it down now. The guys, it's like you don't come and run Winterbourne without making flipping bacon or sausage sandwiches on a Saturday. But you've got to do it, you know. I really often there can be an us and them culture with management, and Royal Mail, it definitely has that feel. But they just work so hard. You know, sometimes my job's a nightmare, but I don't go out in the bloody snow and the rain and all the rest of it all the time.
No.
So I can get a few bacon sandwiches. Although there was one occasion where I thought I'd made all of them a sandwich. So I was like, right, I'm going to have a badass bacon butty now. And I made a massive one and I ate it. And the guy came in and went, "Have you done bacon sandwiches?" Like, oh, shit. Yep, but I've eaten yours. So, anyway, none of that is hobby related. Well, it is hobby related, but it's not related to what I've been doing on my hobby desk. So when I get to my hobby desk, I've done a bit more War Master. I did some Black Knights and
they look cracking.
Yeah, I was really pleased with those. I got the really dark, sort of grimy look.
I love 10mm cavalry. That's where I think they are. I love it. It looks so good.
Bats as well. I still need to dry brush the bases and finish them up. And then I'm not far off. Oh, I made a good start on some Graveguard as well. I'm moving towards 1,000 points. So I'm not a long way off. Not a long way off. But I started to feel a bit. I was itching for another project, do something different. And what I've done this year, and it's kind of been good in a way because obviously I've finished all apart from Scarbrand, who I bought partway through the year, all of my Khorne miniatures, which is great. You know, it's a lot of models. It's like 200 models or something I had to do. And I've got through them, and that's brilliant. But that focus has meant that I've often got excited about other things and then got frustrated because I can't do it, and then ended up not really doing anything, which is a bit weird. Yeah. So
that is such a common thing, though, when you start flapping around in circles about not being able to do something, or what do I do, that you end up just not doing anything.
Yeah. That's not just hobby, is it? That happens in all sorts of things. So I was feeling a bit like I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to have a crack at some Space Marines.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd do some Primaris, and I was going to do a few different ones, different chapters, but then I decided no, I'm just going to do try out my Rift Stalkers. And so I've done 3. I've almost done 3. I'm just finishing off the bases at the moment. And that's just been so much fun, just to put something to one side. There's no pressure. Like, I'm not trying to paint a 2,000 point Rift Stalker army. I'm not even trying to say I'm definitely going to start an army. I'm just painting these 3 dudes and getting the airbrush out and going back to the sort of the stuff I really love airbrushing, and the sort of zenithing and getting in and building up the armor and pin washing. Like, oh my god, why don't I pin wash everything? Because it is so good. And actually it's interesting because I've been experimenting a bit. I've been talking to Henry and like increasing the amount of gloss on the model to get it to pin better, but also trying out enamels. So like enamels, they're like all done. It's just insane.
I
so
noticed that when I'm doing that last enamel coat on my Space Wolves. It's like I
Yeah.
just put a blob on and it goes bloop into all the cracks. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, why don't I do that for washing?
yeah. So that's been really good. Really fun. And they're not quite done. I'm going to play around with weathering in the legs into the bases when I get to that. I've decided I didn't want to go quite as dark as I thought I would when I set out. I liked it a bit lighter. Bit on the fence as to doing edge highlights, because it's that thing a bit like that you were saying, really, weighing up time versus sort of end results. So,
yeah,
what has been great, so a few great things. No trim, so that's been glorious, like really good.
That's worth clarifying. No trim, and you're comparing to your corn here, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
no trim, so that's been great. So a couple of things, other things, hobby things that I found. So first is, and it may have just been me, but I don't think it was, I used the Games Workshop Aircast thinner when I was using the Games Workshop Air paints. Now, I've always heard in the past that in general, the company, so like if you're using Vallejo thinner is good, etc. That's the kind of idea. And I sort of thought, well, all right. I really felt that it flowed better. I actually think it worked better, which is odd. I didn't expect it, to be honest. I really didn't. I think
my biggest issue with Aircast thinner is that, I mean, the thinner, I know it's radio, not television, but I've got the two here. So the Vallejo thinner is that big. And I'm holding up a, how many mils is that? 200 mil bottle. And then the air is what? How big is one of those tops? I have to move the. There you go. There's one there.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong.
So the air is 24 mil.
Yeah.
The Aircast thinner. So I mean, the difference in size is what puts me off, because if they'd done Aircast thinner in a 200 ml bottle and charged a £5 for it, no, it would be a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I wouldn't. But then, to be honest, I don't tend to use Citadel colours for big airbrushing projects. It's only for like little bits and bobs where I want a colour match to it. That I found it useful, because so the armors, the white armor there's no Citadel in that.
Yeah.
The other thing is Primaris are bloody amazing to paint.
Yeah, they are great.
Like, you don't get it until you paint in one, and I hadn't painted one before, but
they're a different.
It's just totally. It's so enjoyable. You've got like a canvas there that you feel like you can work with and do something with, and things are crisp, and you know what stuff is, and you can get in and around. Oh, mate, they're lovely. They are so nice. So I really enjoyed painting those. Just 3 intercessors. And so I suppose, at the risk of us going, this is another long hobby desk, but it's been a fun one. In the same vein, as Ben mentioned, plans for 2021. I don't know, really. I'm almost like the opposite to you. I don't really have a big plan. I was thinking, oh yeah, it'd be good to work through my specialist game stuff. It'd be good to work through my terrain, but actually, I've really enjoyed doing those three guys. So I'm toying with the idea of picking up a box of the Infiltrators.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit on the fence, because on the one hand, box of Infiltrators is £35, and then you've got the Start Collecting, the Phobos version one, which is £60, and in there you've got the easy build Infiltrators, you've got the flying gun guys.
Yeah.
I'm doing a U now because I can't remember. what they're called. You've got the eliminators and you've got the Phobos capture. So you've got a lot more miniature for your pound, but you are buying a backlog. And I'm like, oh, do I want that backlog? Even though I could get through it quickly, but I think there's always a little bit of a lie going on when your brain's like, yeah, but you could paint it quickly, because actually you still got to sit down and paint it. Like, you still have to spend time on said thing. So
it's so true, that, isn't it? That your brain will say, oh, that's not hard. There's only like 5 colours to base coat, and then a wash, and then maybe a highlight. And you think, oh, that's easy. But then, that's 2 weeks work on
it doesn't matter how fast a technique is. You still got to do something, you know? So I'm a little bit unsure on that. And then and then added to that is the fact that Dan and Tom and potentially Ben Chambers, because I was chatting to him about it today, but they're doing a New Year, New Army AOS thing.
Okay.
So
no, Warzone going to do a new army?
Yeah, he's bought the start collecting the Stormcast one. He wants to do the white, the Knights Excelsior, the ones that are like really angry and just smash everyone.
Oh, that's cool.
And then Tom's looking at Cities of Sigmar. And so they asked if I wanted to join in. And I was like, well, yeah. But you know what I'm like. I don't have a great track record for it.
No, you do not.
And I was toying with the idea of doing Flesh Eater Courts. But actually, I'm really drawn, again, not for the first time, to doing the Nurgle army. And doing because I've been enjoying the washes and stuff. And I'm looking now at the Rotbringers as a start point. So the start collecting for them, picking that up, because I really like the idea that Dan would have picked up a start collecting, and I've picked up a start collecting, and can paint those up. But again, similar thing. I'm sort of like, well, do I get a box of
Start collecting
Blight Lords on their own, £35. But what's interesting, so I don't know actually if you'd ever want to buy just a box of Blight Lords, because the Blight Lords are £35. The start collecting £60. The Puscoil Blight Lords, which are the ones that are riding around on the little flies, they're £40. And so you get the Blight Lords and the Puscoil dudes in the start collecting, so that's £75 worth of model for £60, and then you also get the little Plague Lord guy, which you might not want multiple of him, but
bits.
Yeah. So and I've got shed loads of Nurglings from the last time that I thought Nurgle would be a good idea, and I built
sold it all off,
and then got rid of it. Like, oh, don't! It's so annoying now as well, because of course, as a extension to this, and the reason this links back to the Riftstalkers is, I was then like, well, if I'm going to do Nurgle in Age of Sigmar, might as well do the demons and do the crossover and do Death Guard, and they're about to get their new codex. So then I go, right, Death Guard, I know, I'll pick up the 3 easy build Plague Marines and have a go at painting those. Except they don't make them anymore, so you can't buy those. So...
Don't they?
No. I've been looking, they're gone. And then I start thinking, about all the Dark Imperium, and I'm looking at that online, and that's gone up, and because it's not available anymore. And I'm actually having a Ben moment now where I'm like, well, how dare they stop making this product when I want to buy it?
Is the Dark Imperium Plague Guard not in a separate start collecting box?
I don't believe so. But I'm thinking that they might be soon, because the Death Guard Codex is about to come out.
Yeah, because that means that the Space Marines aren't in a start collecting box either, then, are they?
No.
That's okay. It would be nice to see those two forces not
which
fade
is
away.
Really interesting, because with that in mind, I don't think there's actually a model for an Ancient at the moment.
Or Primaris Ancient.
Yeah. because he was in there, wasn't he? So yeah, so there's a few things on my mind for going into 2021, but nothing solid yet.
Yeah. There's one last thing that I need to do before Christmas, which is my dad's making a train set to go with the a tabletop world scenery.
Yes.
And mum's been buying the little bits of the tabletop scenery for me to paint for him for Christmas. So I've got a little one of their cottages to paint. And at the same time, I picked up the blacksmith's forge, so I might do that at the same time because I really love that model, and I'm dead excited about doing those.
Yeah, and you did that little one you did was amazing.
It's a little toilet.
Yeah.
Little outhouse. It was cracking. It's a beautiful model. So good. I love the fact that there's detail on the inside. It's not just a shell. It's an actual structure with internal detail. It's amazing.
I'm not sure, like, I can't even remember what I was thinking that led to this. I was thinking about trying different things. So I'm not sure whether if I do the Nurgle, what I want to... I almost want to go at them fresh and do them however I want to do them as their own standalone thing. But part of me is really drawn to the idea of somehow tying them in, like maybe across the basing scheme with the corn. So I've got like a big... But the difficulty is, so like I really like the snow you've done on your wolves. And because I like the way I do snow, but it is much more stylized. It is more kind of, this is a miniature soldier on a made up basing material. Whereas I think yours has got more of a realistic feel to it to look at.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a bit down the way. Goodness, I haven't even got a Nurgle model yet, let alone worrying about how I'm going to base it.
I had spent a bit today. A lot of my afternoon has been spent going through the projects I've got to do and having a little bit of a think about how I would go about doing them. And one of those is the Nurgle half of Dark Imperium, which I keep forgetting I haven't painted. In my head, I'm like, I finished Dark Imperium. That's done. I've painted that box, but I haven't. I've got the Nurgle to do. And what I was really keen about was using airbrush to hit it in with really odd colours. So starting with like a really bland sort of either deepkin flesh or pallid witch flesh or flayed one flesh, like a really like bright skanky flesh, and then hitting it in with some like magenta or like a turquoise or odd colours in different places. Then doing all of the rotting bits with that Nighthaunt gloom, so it looks like necrotic flesh, and then banging a wash over the whole thing. I'm mainly thinking about Poxwalkers here, actually, more than the Nurgle themselves. But I'm actually thinking about doing a similar thing to the Space Marine ones, some form of enamel wash, because there's a dust wash, isn't there? Which is a grey, bluey grey, I think, which is slightly different from the streaking grime. So there's the dust and the streaking grime, and every company does similar products versions of both of them. But I was thinking maybe the grey, but then I was thinking the grey might take some of the colours out of the. But that's what I've been thinking about, and I think that would look really cool with Nurgle. So you just get some absolute crazy colours across the army that just sort of pop out and give you that kind of visual interest. But you're relying on the washing to get your contrast and your depth out of it. That was my thought. That was my thinking about it. But I think that Nurgle is one of those armies where you can just go crazy with colours and sort it out in the wash phase.
The nice thing with Nurgle as well is although the Nurgle's number is 7, you're also 3 is also a good Nurgle number. So like if you want a great unclean one, because I was thinking today, I'd need a great unclean one, and then I was like, I actually probably need 7. But then I was like, well, no, you don't need 7. You could just have 3 because of the 3.
3
points. So, you know, that's good to know as well. I'd start brown, I think, but I'm not talking about the Poxwell, because actually just talking about the Nurgle, I'd start from a brown, and then I'd airbrush up the armor through to like a bone, a bright bone, almost white actually, might even go to white, and then go in and airbrush like the sort of fleshy shitty bits like that in whatever colors I wanted. You could probably do it with contrast actually over the because you'd bring the armor up to a color that would be up around your sort of grey seer, and then go in with like the purpley washes and the greeny washes and all the stuff like that, and then start going in with streaking grime. And I'll tell you what, Rune Lord Brass with Cryptek bloody armor shade on it is an excellent color, and then you hit that with decayed metal. Oh my goodness, it's just and the other thing as well that I know you've said about this before, but Chris mentioned it as well, and I thought I'll have a quick go. And Rise of Rust, but then like
watered down,
but thinned right out with isopropanol. Really good, like, oh my goodness. So yeah, there's a few things I'm excited about, but very conscious that I think that's about an hour now for Hobby Desk, which is
cool.
It's a nice epic Hobby Desk review. So what we thought we'd do, guys, we don't, you know, if you're avidly listening for the sort of Dadhammer-esque stuff, it's in here. I'm going to touch on it throughout and then go in a bit more detail towards the end. But we're going to go into the Galaxy of War, and we're going to talk about what we thought has come out as cool and what we'd like to see, and do a similar thing in Immortal Realms. So yeah, thank you for listening all the way through the Hobby Desk. Go grab some refreshments and join us in the grim darkness of about, I don't know, how long are the little bridges? 20 seconds?
15,
not even
20
that.
Seconds, yeah.
I don't think it's even that much, is it? Cool. Right, grim time. Welcome, listeners, to the grim darkness for the last time of 2020. Where, to be honest, it's only been grim and dark for your wallet, to be honest, because there's been so much awesome. I just reeled off a list to Ben of all the stuff that's come out for the 41st millennium. Well, not just the 41st millennium, the 41st or the 31st millennium.
The universe.
Yeah, the universe. And it is an epic list. So I'm sure we'll have forgotten things, but we've kind of just gone through. So we've obviously had 9th edition. Came with some banging terrain. We've had Space Marines have come out, Necrons, and it's important to remember that like a lot of new models with both of those. A lot of like Necrons is basically a redo of the range in many respects.
There ain't much left, is there? I mean, there's a few of the destroyers left, but pretty much everything else has been revamped, hasn't it? It's good.
Yeah. Then, and we've had Space Wolves and Death Watch codexes. But we've also had Skies of Fire for Aeronautica. We've had a bunch of different knights for Titanicus. The Warbringer Titan came out at the beginning of the year. And a whole series. We've had more books this year, probably more printed pages for Necromunda this year than the game entirely got in its last edition.
Yeah.
First edition. You know, which is just I think says a lot about the speed and the focus and the resource that's going into each game. So I guess, Ben, I'd imagine, I don't know, because there was the thing of the Space Wolves, there wasn't any new miniatures, was there? I was going to ask you what your standout was, really.
Oh, Ragnar Blackmane. 100% Ragnar Blackmane.
Oh yeah, of course, he came out, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this year has been just so exciting for releases that I mean, one of the things I would say is this year has been challenging for every company, but I think Games Workshop has done as best they possibly could have done with keeping people engaged with the hobby. The community team has been just doing such a fantastic job of continually putting out content, whether it's articles or Twitch videos or hobby roundups or the previews, which must have been so hard. It's so much easier to go to Adepticon and go, look at all this stuff. But you don't really know this year whether it was actually ever going to come. You know, there was some stuff that I'm sure they were previewing, or we're going to preview, and be like, are we going to get that out on the shelves? Is that going to happen? So, but they've done it, and there has been times where, you know, I've got myself preposterously excited about a preview, and then thought, oh, is that it? Because it's only been like 3 or 4 things, but then you'd have another one the following week and the week after, and actually it kind of kept me excited. And I think there's just been some absolutely superb stuff this year. I mean, Titanicus has been rolling along. Like you said, we've got loads of different knights now. You can now effectively build a knight army that will take on a lot of things, if that's your bag. Because knights are pretty tasty against titans if you swarm them. You know, there is definitely a degree of... You can't just go in with a full titan army, I don't think, easily, if you're playing a big game. You've got to especially if you're going up against knights, you need to think about knights. So there's just so many more options with that now. Necromunda's been ace, isn't it? Those 4 books. And just blowing the lid off of like what we imagined those gangs to be. So the original box sets were great. But then like from the moment they released the Goliath ones, it was like, and here's some new stuff that you'd never thought of before. It's like, oh yeah, that's so good.
I think and this is in, you know, it's not a negative. The only challenge really is what do you do? Yeah. Well, yeah, this is it. So like, it is no exaggeration. Even me, who gets, you know, a fair amount of hobby time, I'm very fortunate in that regard. I could just focus on Necromunda this coming year, and I still wouldn't do everything this year that I'd like to do with Necromunda.
Yeah.
Terrain, you know, I haven't even started a Necromunda terrain set. But I am itching to, ever since doing that Warcry terrain, I am so excited by doing Necromunda terrain. Oh, mate, Necromunda is just absolutely banging. It's so good. And even though I am terrible at it, and Chris like lays down the smackdown on me when I play, it's all worthwhile for when I set his models on fire and he gets upset about the blaze rule again. I love it. So yeah, Necromunda. The one I haven't really jumped in on, I guess, is Skies of Fire. So beautiful models. But I haven't finished painting the first one, and it's again a fantastic game. Really great, looks wonderful. What I have done is kept buying the books, and I will keep trying to, where I can afford it, keep up with all the books, because I don't necessarily think it will happen, but if it were to be the case that any of these games ever went away, you would still have all of that stuff. And also, I like the thought that actually, if I wake up one day, as often happens, with this crazy cool idea that I want to do Titanicus, I've got what I need, apart from miniatures. I've got some miniatures, obviously, for that. But so I like to try and keep up with the books. So I think, what's the next one?
House of Artifice.
Is the next for Necromunda. So
yeah, that was pre-released today. We're recording on Saturday, so
yeah. The trouble is, like, you talk about standouts, right? There are so many. You know, I was thinking to myself just now, oh, what are my standouts? And I was like, oh yeah, flat out, Biker Chaplain, Primaris Biker Chaplain. That is amazing. And then I was like, oh, but what about the Chaplain in the Indomitus box? Because he's brilliant. I was like, hang on a minute, though. What about the Blade Guard captain, the Blade Guard ancient? What about the Blade Guard themselves? What about just that dude that's like the defender of the Necron Overlord with that massive great gun just stood there?
Yeah.
What about just the Necron warriors? They're just like, because they've got like bits hanging off and falling off them, you know, and that's before you even start to think about your big centerpieces like the Catan of the Void Dragon and the Silent King and the Necron terrain. You know, and you just think, oh my God. And then the Gladius tank as well, you know. Oh, it's just.
I could do some.
And Escher with bow and arrow. The best bit about that model is that it just makes me think of Rambo all the time.
Or Tomb Raider.
Or Tomb Raider, indeed. Probably more Tomb Raider, but I will just never forget that moment when me and you sat and watched Rambo, the new one, Rambo 4, the new one, Rambo, yeah. And I hadn't been, I don't know if massively engaged with the Rambo series is the right way to put it, but like, I guess it just wasn't one of the ones that was at the top of my head or whatever, top of my mind. And we started watching, and that guy, he shot some guy with a bow and arrow in the jungle. Like, and I just remember going, he's just killed a dude with a bow and arrow, and I was so excited. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So basically, I've just reeled off like all the models and said they're all standard.
So stand out for me. I got a few, but the first one is Ragnar Blackmane, but that is because I think they've done Darren Nathan has done an excellent job. Let's use the name of the people who got sculpted him, because I think we don't do that enough, of bringing Ragnar Blackmane right up to date. He's so full of energy. He looks exactly like Ragnar Blackmane. The moment you see him, all of the visual cues there. He's just full of power, and I love him. That's just absolutely brilliant. In fact, I love him so much, I'm really intimidated by him. Like I almost don't want to paint him because I want to make sure that when I paint him is as good as I possibly can. But then I actually think, well, let's not do that. Let's paint him to my army standard, and then sit down and do the best you possibly can later, so that you've done one and you can sort of break the back of it. Actually, the second one standout for me was in the same box, Gaskell Thraka.
Yeah,
absolutely superb, like phenomenal. I couldn't have imagined Gaskell Thraka's remake being any better than that figure. I think it's just superb, absolutely superb, to the point where I just almost every time I think about him, I'm like, I'm just going to get him out, build him, and paint him now, because I just love him so much. He's just such a superb model. So that's my second one. I think my third one, it was the little upgrade pack for Orlok. Sealed the deal for me for Orlok. With the jetpack guys and the other ones I forget the name. But I just thought, as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, it's Orlok. It's Orlok all the way for me. They just ticked all of my boxes. I just loved the idea of the jump packs and the aesthetic of the whole thing. But that was number 3. That's my top 3.
I've completely forgotten about the Mechanicum stuff. Did that come out this year? It did, didn't it?
With the Mechanicum horses, yeah.
Yeah, the Serpentis riders and the flyer. That flyer. Oh. If that was in June, you'd be like, yeah, that fits.
Yes, you would.
Wouldn't it? I think you would be like, it's just amazing. So yeah. So I guess
I got one more. Go on. The Lumineth Realm Lords. Oh, that's next. No, that's the next.
You can't have Lumineth Realm Lords.
No, sorry. Yeah, no, that's the next. No, we're doing 40k. So no, ignore me. Yeah, I'm just thinking of my top models.
Spoiler.
So many things, isn't it? I was just overwhelmed by it.
It's insane. Oh, and then you've got like the Inquisitor from the Psychic Awakening series.
Actually, that Necron model in that, for me, is one of the best.
Illuminator Caesaris or
Sucking the soul out of
Caesarus.
that dude on the floor.
Yeah, bit mean.
Sinister. Like, really, before then, I didn't really find Necron all that there.
No, they became a lot more sinister, didn't they, in this iteration? Yeah, yeah. Not nice. Quite unfriendly. Really. Yeah. Wow. What a lot of stuff. So, what would you like to see next year?
Guard. For me, it's a big one. Like, there's two things. I've got a list, and I think some of these will be on yours. So I'm going to give you the 5 things that I would like to see. I'd like to see pretty much a ground up infantry redo, because I think the tanks are fine, of Guard. So maybe 2 or 3 box sets with interchangeable bits. So maybe like a new Cadian box set, a new Catachan box set, and like another one that you could mix and match all the bits in there to create different regiments. I think that would be brilliant. I think that's well overdue. So that's number 1. Number 2 is a similar do-over of the Eldar as they've done to Necrons. I think the Eldar are in need of that.
Yeah.
Number 3, Khorne Berserkers, which I know you agree with, because I keep seeing them pop up on my feed, the old ones, and they just don't cut it anymore, I don't think. And actually, number 4 is also Chaos. I'd like to see some Slaanesh Space Marines.
This is basically my list.
Slaanesh Space Marines. And the last one is Orc Boys. New Orc Boys.
That's so funny. That is literally what was going through my head. Those things.
Those 5 things, and I think if they did those 5 things, then actually 40k would be in a really, really good place then, miniature wise. Like, everything would be at a really good level. I mean, there's some armies that haven't had some core stuff done in a while, like the Tau. Their Fire Warriors are pretty much the same, but I think they're actually really good models and they fit fine.
They were updated, weren't they? When they're not the originals,
No,
although they look very similar.
They were updated, but I think those 5 things would be my key ones. So the Guard, the Orc Boys, Eldar redo, Khorne Berserkers, and Slaanesh Marines of some description. I think Noise Marines, I think they're an elite unit, and I think they should get the same treatment as, say, like the Obliterators. Although I think Obliterators could do with their own separate box set anyway. But the Khorne Berserkers, and I think it'd be nice if they created a sort of Slaanesh Marine that equates to the the Plague Marine, the Khorne Berserker, the Walking Funeral Urns, whatever they call themselves.
Well, that is supposed to be a Noise Marine.
No, the Thousand Suns one.
I know what. Yeah,
the Noise Marine is just a little bit too. I think they're a little bit too elite. I want a kind of squad of them. Like a 10-man squad of rank and file Slaanesh Marines. Not that I'd ever collect them. I'd just like to play against them.
No, so Slaanesh Marines are up there. I think would be great to see. I think what would be nice is to see, and you touched on it then with the Obliterators, but things like the Obliterators and the Venom Crawler find their way into multi-part plastic kit form, because they're lovely and they would really benefit from that. I think they'd really benefit from that. Obviously, I'm gonna say Khorne Berserkers, but I genuinely wouldn't be upset if they did Slaanesh first, because I think they need it so bad. Like the Khorne Berserkers with cutting and sticking and other models in the range, you can make some passable Khorne Berserkers, but I think the Slaanesh is not so much. So definitely Slaanesh. And I mean, I echo you on boys. Definitely echo you on Guard. I'm just sort of going through in my head all the different ranges, and the Eldar, like you say, would be good. You just need to be careful with the Eldar, because I think, like the Falcon, for example, is just beautiful, and it will always be beautiful.
Yeah, but they could redo it and keep the spirit of it. And the Falcon came out, I think,
issue 217 of White Dwarf.
Yeah.
Which is 1997.
3 years after I started.
1997. Yeah, 23 years ago.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It is a long time. But that just goes to show how well Jess did sculpting the damn thing in the first place. It just stood the test of time, literally. When you put it on a battlefield, I don't think it's not one of the parts of the Elder Army that I look at and think, oh, that could do with a new one. Actually, if they didn't touch the grav tank, I don't think I'd be too bothered. It's the same with the Dire Avengers. If they didn't touch them, I wouldn't be too bothered. But I think the Guardians...
I love the Guardians.
All of the aspect. Well, yeah, but you could keep the same aesthetic, but just improve the plastic kit.
Well, yeah, they are a bit mental. Like their legs are two separate legs.
Yes.
There was a period of time where that sort of happened, and it was a bit like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, but like all of the aspects just need an overhaul. I mean, it's just I do not understand why things like the Shining Spears did not get done when they did the jet bikes.
Yeah,
and the elite jet bikers are on the jet bike that was released literally 30 years ago, 27 years ago. It's madness.
We've talked about the main 40k range, but of course things like Battlefleet Gothic. To be honest, I'm almost like, and I don't really want to say this out loud, but I'm almost like I would be okay if it wasn't this year coming, because I've got lots to do. And I really, really want to see Gothic. I really do. I think it would be ace if they did like an enforcer like car/tank thing. Like wheeled enforcer.
No, Commander.
Yeah. How sweet would that be? That would be nice to see.
Even better than that, enforcers on motorbikes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, just fully go for it.
Yeah. Just drop any illusion that they're not like cut from the same cloth. Yeah. Because we all know they are. And as they should do, because back when Judge Dredd was in its infancy and Games Workshop was in its infancy, there was so much crossover between the two worlds, like cross-writing, the same writers, the same thought processes was going in, and the same influences. So, I think it's fine for Games Workshop to say, we came from the same place as this came from the same place as us.
I guess the important thing is they just have to. You've got the legalities, haven't you?
Yeah. But I don't think they need to have much of a problem with that, considering, like I said, that there is so much of a crossover in those early days. The enforcers are just part of 40k culture, realistically.
Yeah. Cool. Right.
Age of Sigmar.
I'm really excited to do the same for. I'm really excited to do the same for Mortal Realms. That's why I want to get into Mortal Realms now. So.
As long as I don't mention 40k models in the just get too carried away.
You'll be talking about the new Primaris army in the middle of the Mortal Realms. what is going on? Yeah, okay. So guys, thank you for joining us for that. It's very whistle stop. Be great to know actually what your favourite 40k models are, or have been. So we'll
or not just models, your favourite things about 40k this year and what you would like to see.
Yeah, and don't be sneaky and sneak in a grumble on the end either. I'd love Primaris if they weren't so expensive. Like that. That's my impression. my what not to do. Cool. Guys, join us in the Mortal Realm.
Hi guys, and we're back in the Mortal Realms. refreshed and ready to go. And we're going to pretty much do the same as we did for the 40k section. As it's the last episode of the year, it's a good time to look back at all the goodies of 2020, and also look about what we would like to see for 2021, or in fact, in the mortal realms in general, really, because pretty much we'll start with a lot of what we talked about has actually come true. When we've sat and done these in the past and gone, I'd love to see that for mortal realms, a lot of it's happened realistically, which is really exciting. Really, really exciting. I mean, I think that Age of Sigmar is moving a lot faster in a lot of ways than I expected it to. I don't know about yourself.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Because, I think so. Things like the Lumineth, and the Ideneth and stuff like that, where they've taken a faction and they're breaking it apart more.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of that in the beginning, and then they sort of started amalgamating things a bit, and now we're breaking it apart again. So I've written here Lumineth, Sons of Behemoth as the two big army ones, and then obviously we've had Catacombs for Warcry. I think Dire Chasm is this weekend on.
Yeah, it's today
for Underworlds. So yeah, that's been. And then, of course, we've got New Blood Bowl. In the fantasy vein. I'll tell you what we haven't seen for a while, and I appreciate this isn't Mortal Realms, but not seen much mention of this Old World project.
No.
Very little. Very quiet. So, don't know what's going on there. But, so Lumineth, you got your pointy elves, Benjamin.
I got my pointy elves.
And they came with some crazy-ass helmets.
Yeah, they did come with some insane helmets. Yeah. So I'm overall, I'm really happy with the Lumineth. Like, just love the look of them as an army. There's the odd. I think one of the things that's really hard here, I'm going to caveat everything I'm about to say with this statement, is that when you love an army as much as I love the High Elves, then you're going to come stuck if you expect them to produce something that is just High Elves 1.2.
Yes, yeah.
It's not going to work. And there's some elements of them which are just 100% High Elves, like the spearmen or pikemen, because those spears are flipping mental long, are just gorgeous, and they're so. And the cavalry have all of those like high elf bits about them, don't they? I mean, you could get those spearmen, rank them up for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and I'd be happy with that. No problem at all. But yeah, like the hammer guys, I think that's a bit of a curveball. And the cow beast was a bit of a curveball.
Oh my god! But isn't it beautiful? I love that. Arliath, the Stoneheart King. The more I see it, I just love it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when I first saw the I forget the name of them, like the hammer wielders with the dual hammers, and I wasn't like massively excited about them, but the more I see them, the more I think, yeah, absolutely. There is so much room in Age of Sigmar for crazy ass helmets on elves. We have crazy ass helmets on everything else, so why not crazy ass helmets on elves? Really, yeah, so I overall really excited about them. Just a bit sad that I didn't have the brain space or the time to get stuck into them straight away.
It's interesting that as well, because I reflect on that with so like if they bought out something new for Khorne tomorrow for Age of Sigmar,
yeah, would you be able to get on with it?
Would I be able to jump in? I mean, to be fair, I did when they did the book before. I bought the Spells and Wizards Tower straight away and got them done. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would. But yeah, I like the Lumineth, dude. But it's like the Sons of Behemoth. There's an example for me. So I was really excited about them. Really excited about getting one of those giants and putting in my Khorne army. But when it came out, I just wasn't in. I was doing something else. I don't even know what I was doing. But it wasn't buying and painting a Son of Behemoth massive ass giant. Mega Gargant.
Yeah. And that's a stunning kit. You know, one kit, 3 completely different outcomes, like completely different, not even remotely the same. And what people have been doing with it just proves how versatile. It's just a phenomenal kit. It's such a strong release for Age of Sigmar. That is, and it's a really good addition to the destruction side. So destruction now have this fantastic range of armies. You go from like the Gloomspike Gits, where you've got that horde army with loads of little dudes, weird funky stuff, some quite hard hitting units like Squig Hoppers and things like that, but really it is realistically a horde army. And then you've got, like, sitting in the middle, you got your Iron Jaws, and then your ogres, and then your Sons of Behemoth. So you've got this range of 4 armies that literally covers, probably done on purpose, to be honest, like covers that. What do I want to have out of my destruction army? Do I want to have low model count hard hitters, or do I want to just swarm people, or do I want to go for a generic destruction army and merge them all together and go for that? I think there's I think destruction is in a really good place now because of that Behemoth release. It's a great range of options that I don't think you get in the order. For example, I mean, Stormcast are relatively hard hitting, low point cost, but you don't get, like, unless you took a dragon army. But there's only really one model for that. I think it doesn't have the same sort of across the board.
Yeah, I mean, Caradron, you've got some big individual models, but I don't. None of that takes away from. You're absolutely right. The destruction range is so nice with lots of options for everybody. So yeah, it's great. And
the books have been written in such a way that you get different play styles within those different armies. So they really like, so many play styles to play with destruction now. It's fab.
Yeah. Sadly, because of the lockdown, I haven't had the chance to play Catacombs. I don't even know if Chris picked it up in the end, actually. I don't think he did. But it looked great. Shame not to play it, but then that's just the name of the game, isn't it, at the moment? And Diachasm, I've definitely not played. I don't know that I'll jump in on Diachasm. I bought the last one, which I can't remember the name of. But Beastgrave, but I haven't painted the models. I haven't even played it, I don't think. They're wonderful models. And I think it's one of those that I'm drawn to it because it doesn't take up a lot of space and it's quick. But actually, it's a bit of a lie because you do need to, if you want to get the most out of it, you need to put quite a lot in because you have to get, you need to be getting all the cards, but then also you need to be playing regularly to try and remember the cards and build the decks and etc. etc. So
Underworlds has taught me a very big hard lesson. I am absolutely awful at deck building, and I'm absolutely awful at deck games. So, but my draw to Underworlds is those small little units that you can dip into the different races, and I really like to buy the boxes just so I've got a little bit of everything so that I can paint if it took my fancy. I don't even feel like I need to paint them all. It's just nice to know that if I wanted to paint a fire warrior, a dwarf, a fire dwarf, whatever they're called,
Fire Slayer,
that I've got 4 of them in my box ready to go. Assembled, undercoated, ready to go.
Obviously,
I'm a big fan of those ranges. I'm like, I cannot express, and they're in my top 5. The Iron Jaws Underworld box set. Those 3 hard boys, those three brutes are just banging, absolutely superb.
Mm.
And the Goblin Wolf Riders. So actually, those two are on my top 5.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. They're wonderful. So I was just thinking then, obviously, mostly we've just seen a glimpse of them probably for January, but the new Slaneshi stuff, that Slanesh Lord guy that's in the Pleasure and Pain or whatever it's called box, I think that's probably my top model of this year.
It's pretty close. I think Sigvold is my top model.
Oh, yeah, Sigvold. Oh, my goodness. He gets an extra point for his video, though.
Yes.
It's just beautiful.
Shall I do my top 5 and then you do your top 5?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So I've got Sigvold as my number 1 because I think that as a model, it's just outstanding. The rest are in no particular order. So I don't think the Wolf Riders are actually 2020. I think they were just at the end of 2019. So the Iron Jaw Brutes for Underworlds, absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The Sons of Behemoth Giant, absolutely love that. I think that's fantastic. The Lumineth Realm Lord Spearman is my number 4. And then the Slanesh Lord is in on my top 5 too. But that's my 5. And I think they're really strong models. And I think some of those we'll see time and time again in painting competitions because they're just superb. I mean, how many people have you seen paint that Iron Jaws Brute? You know, the warband leader on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Like once a week, somebody does a fantastic paint job on it. Brilliant.
Do you know, I lose track of what's come out when as well. There's just so much coming out.
I'm pretty sure the Goblins are end of 2019 because I was putting them together at the start of 2020.
Yeah.
Not sure though.
So I think that it's really hard. The Slanesh guy is my top. I've decided. Probably then the giant, I reckon, because that is just amazing. That is just awesome. I reckon probably the warband leader for the flame dudes. I always call them the flame dudes.
From Warcry. Yeah. Signs of the Flame.
That's it. Yeah. What's going on? Why are you remembering and I can't remember? So
that's what happens. I forget. You remember what I'm talking about. You forget. I remember what you're talking about. So.
Yeah. So that's absolutely cracking. And to be honest, there are a couple of miniatures in the elves that would be up there as well.
Yeah. Second that.
Really like those. And even a couple of the little bits of scenery that come in there are really cool. Really cool. Lumineth Spearman, I got the Light of Tharian. That is just brilliant.
Yes, it is. I think the only reason he's not in my top 5 is because the Spearmen are.
Yeah.
They were just such a bullseye for me.
Yeah. There's some really good stuff in there.
There is.
I flipping love it.
So what are you looking forward to for 2021 then? What would you like to see?
Corn Berserkers.
You've got enough corn for Age of Sigmar.
I would like to see... Well, I'm really excited to see what we get for the Slanesh. I think what would be nice is to see... So, I don't know, because I know there's a risk, obviously. You don't want every faction to be the same, but so it looks like Slanesh are going to get sort of medium level infantry with this release. So
Mortals.
So when you think about like Zinch, you've got the Acolytes, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then for Khorne, you've got the Blood Reavers, right?
Yeah.
It would be great to see new Marauders for Slaves of Darkness.
Yes.
But equally, it would be nice to see like that level of troop, maybe for Nurgle and for Slanesh,
Do you not think that the Slaves to Darkness Warcry boxes cover that?
No, I don't really, because I feel like they're cool, but their aesthetic is quite. I feel like I'd like a more generic
Barbarian.
Now, I think the Spire Tyrants are close, but the box sets don't allow for a huge amount of customization without a lot of work.
Okay, yeah.
Or have enough. So it's not, you don't have to have loads of customization, but like the Blood Reaver models are brilliant. They're really good. The ones just the box, the multi-part kit is really good. So it'd be nice to see that. It would be nice to see that mid-level. So again, we're talking sort of Wrathmonger / Rotbringer or a Blight Lord, level character, but for Tzeentch. So like something cool like that.
You kind of do with the Zangors,
yeah,
and the Disc Riders,
and I guess that's where it mixes it up a bit. I just like the Mortals. That's the thing. So
yeah, no, I agree. I think the Mortals and Chaos are what make Chaos Chaos. I know that sounds daft, but the demons are all well and good, but you know the humans that have gone, and elves and dwarves that have gone to the dark side. I think they. And that's one of the things I love about Warcry is that you have the elves and the dwarves now. It's not just humans that have gone bonkers.
Yeah. So I know, don't get me wrong, Chaos has got loads of stuff. They've got some fantastic models. I just think there are some little holes in the range that would be nice to see them sort of filled up. I think it would be nice to see like the Caradron and the Ideneth, for example, get a couple of things, extras to the range, fill them out a bit. But the thing with the Mortal Realms, though, is in a way, weirdly, more than 40k, because there's so much in 40k space for it. But I'm quite happy just to see what curveballs come hammering out of the wastelands. Anything can be living in the Mortal Realms. Mad-ass stuff. I think it. It would be lovely to see Iron Jaws get more. I would like to see all of them. It's nice to see all of them get more. It would be nice to see the Cities of Sigmar get some like more kind of Mortal Realms-esque infantry.
I mean, that's my big one. That's actually my only real thing that I'd like to see. You hit the nail on the head, really, when it comes to it. The Mortal Realms have had a cull of all the miniatures that were old, didn't get used, or were not selling. And in 40k, those ranges are still there and in need of a redo. The Eldar and the Guard are two really good examples. But actually, the Mortal Realms model ranges are superb, really. There's no dead weight in there, apart from, in my opinion, the Cities of Sigmar. The Cities of Sigmar, for me, feel like they need a really good, solid model release, set of models to start pulling all of that stuff together. So like mortal troops, like really distinct mortal troops that fit the Age of Sigmar. And that like they look like they're marching out of one of those massive cities, of Order. They look like a real thing, because they're so cool in the books. When you read about like the armies coming from the different states, and they're all, gathering together to defend. What's the one that bridges two realms? Hammerhal. In the Gotrek and Felix, or the Gotrek book, they're all gathering to Hammerhal because they know there's going to be an attack on the way. And you hear about 3 or 4 different regiments, and they're all so different, and they're so awesome. Like there's the warriors that sound like Maasai warriors, but like in plate mail.
They're amazing.
And there's like, there's so many ideas that you could have with it. And I think for me, tidying up the cities of Sigmar is got to be 2021's main objective. to have like normal elves, normal dwarves, normal humans that all live together in cities and have a good box set of each so that people can really make them their own, I think would be my big one.
My biggest thing I'd like to see is another quest, a Warhammer quest.
Yeah, because we don't have one now, do we?
No, and I'd love to see another fantasy one. There's something about, I enjoyed Blackstone Fortress. I played through it with Chris, and I did enjoy it, and it was wonderful to see little things explored and the excuse to make like traitor chaos, which makes me think that's what we need in 40k is traitor guard, proper army. But anyway, it was nice to see all of that. That was great. But there's something about dungeon crawling that just fits right old in fantasy, in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I want to see. I'd love to see that, even though Chris has written probably 4 or 5 different rule sets for dungeon crawling this year. Until he can sculpt as well, like the studio for me, then it's not good enough. He needs to up his game. So yeah, another quest. That's
I think I agree with that. I think another quest would be awesome. Yeah. And I can feel it coming as well, because we don't have the Hammer Hall one anymore, and we don't have Silver Tower anymore. And I think they've been focusing on Blackstone Fortress, which is actually really disappointing. 2020 is, I think, done Blackstone Fortress no favours at all, because a lot of those add-on packs, I don't think they've been able to keep up with production, because a lot of them had card content, and I think that's been something that they've struggled to get hold of. You know, the one with the Zoe is gone.
Yeah.
Which is just shocking, really. I hope there's, I must say shocking. I mean, we've only just had it. And I feel like I'd be absolutely gutted if that model didn't come back in some way. Like, genuinely gutted. The same with the Traitor Command box set. Because the Ogre and the Commissar and that are just fabulous. And, you know, it would be nice to have those as separate models. And expanding that out further, the Rogue Trader box set. You know, there's lots of these box sets that are gone with models that are just absolutely stupendous, and Silver Tower and the Shadows and Hamhole not quite so bad, because a lot of those models are available separately now. You know, you can get them separately. But when we lose box sets and don't get replacement, it's a bit gutting. Which I feel like Blackstone Fortress has been really hit by this year. But I think you're right. Warhammer Quest, it feels like a 2021 one, that does, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what we need.
And I think having 6 more adventurers, superbly sculpted adventurers, to have as add-ons to the other armies.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be great. Well, okay, good. So, as before, let us know what you'd like to see. That would be good. We'll do some posts. So try and collate that together. Would be really cool. We'll see what next year brings. On that note, though, we are now going to go into sort of a roundup of the community for the year. That could be a long one, but there's too many awesome of you. Bit of good English there.
I was going to say, is that even a sentence?
Probably not. That's the darkness of 2020 warping my speech.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I am going to go and grab some refreshments, and we will see you in the community. Hail, glorious community. Well done for surviving all the way through to this part of the year. Hopefully thriving on some hobby awesome. So, shout outs, Mr. Hall.
I got loads this week. Been really excited. Picking off the ones that have shown up that have really caught my attention. I'm going to start with one which is a YouTube channel, but it's called Juan Hidalgo Miniatures. So JUAN HIDALGO Miniatures. And his channel is a painting, how to paint channel, all free content. And there's two things about it I really love. So the first one is that the painting videos in and of themselves are really great. But the second one is he's done a series called Heavy Contrast. And there's Heavy Contrast for loads of stuff. And it's a series about using contrast to get quick and beautiful results. So like almost how they were intended, but like to a high level. Mm-hmm. So he'll use them as the base coat and then go from there, for example. And apart from the fact that the guy could narrate my life, his voice is just wonderful. His accent is fantastic. And so I just enjoy listening to him. But he's got a great sense of humor. The videos are fantastic. And the Heavy Contrast series is really, really good. And I watched a couple of his NMM videos. We did an NMM, and I watched the How to Paint Gold NMM Darren Nathan style video, and How to Paint Purple NMM armor. It's a bit of a mouthful to say in a podcast, but non-metallic armor. Great, it's a great channel. Really, really love it. I've spent an absurd amount of time this week watching videos from that channel and videos from the Little Legend Patreon that I might have accidentally signed up for. I'm loving. Right, so next on to Instagram. So the first one is a bit of a curveball, but I've sent you these links. Do you want to open them as we go, Dan?
Yeah. I am.
So the first one is Rena Velikor, Rena_Velikor. Now, she's not a hobbyist in the traditional sense of 40k hobbyist. She's a hobbyist in the traditional broader sense of the word. And she uses polymer clay, she calls herself a polymer clay witch, to make just the most incredible little miniatures. Normally food, which is probably a core, but essentially the one that caught my eye is she's done a little wooden board with a pizza on, and the pizza is the size of a thumbnail, and it's so realistic that it looks like you could just pick it up and eat it. It's absolutely superb. And going through what she's been doing and what she's made and watching her videos on how she's done it, there is so much we could learn about making our hobby, things for our hobby, from watching these videos. Absolutely brilliant, like a real hobby resource. So and I'm just scrolling down in the first few things. She's got.
Please, can you tell me the hashtag again, the name?
Yeah, it's Rena_Velikor.
But Rena spelled
RINA.
RINA. Oh, there it is. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. Little egg, poached egg frittata is our most recent food one, I think. In a little sauce. It's just amazing.
They are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, it really is. So it's just fantastic. And like I said, there's plenty we could learn for our hobby from this sort of stuff. So that's why I've included it. Excuse me. Pardon me. Right, number 2 on the list. Dan's clearly not opening my list that I sent him. Is Thunderwolfen. Now, Thunderwolfen is a chap who's made a custom chapter called the Sword.
I really like, when I was looking at that earlier, I love it. I love the guy with the big mace.
Yeah.
He's really cool. It was quite cool, actually, just opening up the link and seeing the cool conversions he'd done.
Yeah, I mean, there's heavy green stuff conversions on this. And he's very good at like getting the character that he wants into the models. He mentioned recently that he's only done 30 something models this year, but each one of them takes an awful lot of time, and I can understand why. And they're a really unique, magnificent little force, and I've spent a lot of time zooming in and looking at the details. It's great. They really are great, fantastic, and I love the techno barbarian aesthetic that you can get in some Space Marines forces. Like, that's one of the reasons I like the Space Force, because of the techno barbarian aesthetic. I love the fact that they're right up there on the cutting edge of technology, but they've just retained so much of the culture of where they've come from. I think it's fantastic. It's a fantastic account, and if you haven't, I would go and follow it.
I'm always really impressed, like, and I get this, like, with some of the stuff you do as well, like, by how people, like, they look at a model and they imagine a pose and they create these, and I don't know, I've got some that are cool, but I'm just always amazed by, like, I'm looking at this Thunderhammer guy that he's done, and it's just an awesome idea of how to, like, do it. Really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
So that's him. No, not at all. The next one is Correctamundo Brushworks. Correctamundo _Brushworks. This why, because I stumbled across him recently for one of his World Eater conversions and paint jobs, which was a possessed, I think, greater possessed, and then just found his World Eater stuff to be, it's a 30k World Eater stuff. It's just superb, absolutely superb. He's also done Death Guard and a couple of Mechanicum stuff in there, but in fact, scrolling further back, he's done loads of different things. Like, there's some Krieg in there too. Just brilliant.
Those World Eaters are amazing.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, those Death Guard are amazing as well.
Yeah, and it's all done in the style that I'm really starting to think I would like to become my style. So that sort of realistic, not heavily edge highlighted, but you can tell that there's some sensible decisions being made here to make a realistic looking model without spending billions of hours on it. The Krieg are just as superb. They're exactly the aesthetic I want from my Guard army. So yeah, Correctamundo Brushworks, superb, absolutely fantastic. Next on the list is Snotling Discotheque.
Yeah.
So Snotling Discotheque, I've been following for a little while, looking at the work he does, or he or she, I don't know, to be honest. And what I love about Snotling Discotheque is the colours. There's just such awesome decisions made with the colours that they choose to have on their model that I just wouldn't choose. I would no way choose to use them, and yet they work so well. It actually makes me stop and think that I could do better at understanding my colour theory, because his Poxwalker is the influence for exactly what I was talking about earlier, about having those mental colours in a Nurgle army that just look amazing, and you can pull them all together. In fact, his Poxwalker he's done like through the years, and I think even like really early on, where his models, their models are just so colourful. They really catch me every time they come up on my feed.
He's also painted an egg to look like a beaky Space Marine helmet.
Yeah. Yes, it's excellent. So yeah, cracking, love it. Please go and have a look. And he's also painted the Logan Grimnar on a chariot, which wicked, needs to be done because it's a superb model.
Everyone makes mistakes,
even if it's as odd as it comes.
Oh, dude, have you seen his Lamenter's Terminator Captain?
No. Oh, yes.
That is lovely. Lovely jabbly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so that's not in discotheque. Discotheque is exactly the right name because it's all a bit crazy and fantastic.
Yeah,
Love it.
It's really well, doesn't it?
And the last but not least is one that I haven't shared with you, Dan, because I just saw it downstairs while I was eating my dinner. After I was eating my dinner. I'm not on my phone when I eat my dinner. Let's clarify that. It's Bobo's Hobby. BOBOSHOBBY. Bobo's Hobby. Now, Bobo has just finished putting together a modular Space Hulk board made out of bits and gubbins.
Yeah.
And it's illuminated. It's lit. It's got glow in the dark stuff for blood that glows when you turn the lights off. He's done a Terminator teleporter marker with a flashing LED on it, which just absolutely blew my biscuit. He's done, I think, I may or may not be right on this, but I think he's done an electrified like dashboard panel for the Space Hulk, with all the markers that you use for ammunition and that. So, oh yeah, just yes, so much yes in this account. It's brilliant. I mean, thrown in there, of course, is is the exceptional Hulk. There's one of the things he's done earlier. I can't find it now. Is he's used there it is. He's used John Blanche's Dark Millennium playing cards as the paintings in windows for one of the corridors. Oh yes, that's so good. Idea. If I thought to buy a second pack when they were re-released cheaper recently, I'd definitely be doing that. But I'm not wasting my original pack on them.
Yeah, but there's nothing to stop you photocopying them.
No, that is very true. Yeah, that's
or
very
even
true.
Better, scan them in. So then you've got the images forever, haven't you?
There's a library room somewhere further on that as well, with all the things on the floor, and there's chairs and bookcases, and it's just superb. It's just brilliant. Yeah, so in love with that. I want that. I want that Space Hulk board. Yeah, it's a hobby goal. It is amazing. So Bobo's Hobby, everyone. That's my last one on my list. Right, Mr. Johnny, would you like to do the
Yeah, so the hobby group rolls ever onwards. Obviously, having been a month since we looked through it, there's lots of cool stuff on there. I just wanted to pick out Rich Nutter's war band from Underworlds. I can't remember what they're called, Ben, but they're the Sylvan F1. Because it's got loads of colour on it, and it's kind of harking back to what you were saying about Snotling Discotheque and how much you like that. So I think that's really nice, Rich. I think that's superb, mate. It goes without saying that there's loads of great stuff on. John Payne has done the new Bugman, which is a wonderful model, really nice. And I commented on Pete Allison's work on the red armour on his Ambot. And it's always quite cool to see that much effort going into that, because actually, if I was to do an Ambot, I'd be starting off silver and I would be going mental with typhus corrosion and rust and just throwing all that fluid on.
Yeah.
So it's lovely to see that. And then this strange bloke called Ben's done some sculpting. But there was something else I wanted to point out. Needless to say, guys, it was so grateful that you use the page and post your things on here. Really cool. Ian Craig's Celestial Vindicator, Lord Relictor. Very nice.
Ian Craig's hobby output is blistering.
I also thought, I have to say, so Tom Drinkwater has put one of the new ATVs on a base and blended it in, and I think that looks much better on a base. I do tend to go for things on bases, though. I do like that. Obviously, Ed pointing out the obvious third character in the 2P's logo as well in your computer. So that was good to see. Which was nice. And I needed to finish off Dave's Caradron. Oh my goodness. He just posts them up every now and then. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. So yeah, some wonderful stuff in there. And with the new year coming, we ought to revisit the competitions, really. We have been discussing
he just got away from us, really.
Yeah, I guess it would be pretty cool to visit, like, obviously Games Workshop's doing its New Year, New Army thing, and I've already spoken about that, but certainly it would be good to know what sort of projects you guys are looking at doing and what you'd like to do in 2021. So we'll get a post up about that in the hobby group. But in the meantime, please, throw on there, post in there that what are your plans for 2021? Be lovely to see, and maybe even set yourself a challenge and a goal and just chuck it in there. I want to finish this project or that project. I'd love to get my Titanicus up together 2021, for example. Yeah, that's good. Clearly no massive long list of events. Still not really seeing those as such. But hopefully we will come mid sort of 2021. Definite congratulations to Cult of Paint, because Derrigard funded really well, and they're actually shortly going to be launching the Pledge Manager.
Yeah, that's awesome, isn't it? It's nice to see that fully funded. Because I can't wait to see what comes next. So that's what Henry was talking about was so exciting about where they want to go with that project in the future. Because what I love about it is that they've been made with, a lot of them have been made with the painter's mind as to what they could use those models to teach people with, and what you could use as models to practice with. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I really like that. We'd definitely be interested in talking more about Kickstarters, guys. So if you know of any coming up or any have tickled your fancy, let us know. We'd love to have people on. Interestingly, actually, that's important. That's fairly valid to the community. So what we're hoping to do, I think we may have said before, is do an episode with Ben and I, and then do an episode with a guest, and then Ben and I, and then a guest over the coming year. So our next episode, we've got booked in to talk to James Otero from Siege Studios. So that'd be really interesting to hear about a bit more about commission painting and the approach to take that he takes with Siege. And then we've got Rob from Pro Painted podcast coming on.
Rob's
month
awesome.
After that, so that'll be fantastic. What hobbyist? So yeah, we've also got
Valbjorn.
Yes, yeah.
So did so much to inspire me.
Yeah, we've got a few. So eventually we will both be supplanted, I suppose. Surplus. So that's cool. A bit shorter community section, but we are going to go now into the wilds, where we're going to talk a bit about life as a parenting hobbyist. Madness, I tell you.
It is, yeah.
Guys, we will see you in what really is a wild place.
Hi guys, and welcome to Into the Wilds, where it really is going to be a wild one, full of rugrats and crazy anecdotes. But we have, from the inception of this podcast, been been hobby parents at various different stages in that journey. So for me, when I first started, I had a little boy who was, must have been first started back in, so I started this podcast, been 5, I think, 4 or 5. And we just had our little girl arrive at the time. And so I was challenged, the challenge for me at that time was having a second child in the house, which is a completely different experience from having the first one in my experience. And Dan, I think, Josh, you might have only just been born when we started this podcast.
I think he might have been, I think he was 1.
1. And then
Hannah wasn't here.
No. So we both had young ones when we started, and then gained the second one along the journey.
Yeah.
So it's been challenging at times to fit hobby in, and a lot of what we talk about is about getting on with life and fitting the hobby around that. And I think from the outset of this conversation, I'd like to say that one of the biggest things about being hobby parents is that you have to get one thing straight. Being a parent is all, and you got to manage your expectations big time, because everything is going to change, and it's about being clever with your hobby to fit around the kids, and not fitting the kids around your hobby. I know that sounds like a really ridiculous thing to say off the bat, but I do sometimes see people online talking about it in the reverse way. And I don't think that that's a healthy way to look at it. It's my first thoughts. Dan, I don't know about you.
I think it's a really challenging situation. So I think not to get carried away, but I would say I've been in that place, and it just ends up breaking your brain, really. And
yeah,
I think what's hard, especially with a hobby that, and often this is the case with hobbies, but certainly Warhammer and Games Workshop, it becomes such a massive part of your life, or is a massive part. The majority of the people I know now and regularly talk to is through this hobby. Ultimately, my job, which brought me to Bristol, which brought me to Harriet, is all my hobby. It's my downtime. It's how I unwind. It's really important to me. And actually, sometimes it can be really tough to get the balance, because actually so are my family, obviously really, really important to me. But I think sometimes there can be this view of, well, it's just playing with toy soldiers, so obviously it's more important than your family. Sorry, it's not as important as your family. But I think you cannot understate how important a part of you any hobby could be. And the reason I say that is, like, I see it on Facebook, where people just go, right, and they just drop it completely and they get rid of everything, or they're talking about partners or whatever, being like, well, you can't have time doing that, you can't have time doing that. But it is part of you, and it is about managing expectations. You're right, and ultimately, striking a balance. Because for me, I know that, and this is going to sound perhaps over the top, and you might think, well, what's she talking about? But I am a better person to be around if I have been given the time to unwind and do some painting, because it's the thing that I use to regenerate. It's how I feel better. It's how I unwind. So I am a better dad for the kids if I get some of that time. And that's not to say it's really easy to get that time. And it takes a lot of hard work from Harriet as well, my wife Harriet. And it has taken us a long time Joshua's 4.5 now, but by no means have we got it perfect, by no means, but it's taken a lot of time and compromise for us to get to a place where, one, Harriet understands how important it is, but also I understand where it sits in the importance as well. So, I have lots of other responsibilities ahead of my hobbying. And to be honest, the most enjoyable moments are when you can get the kids involved. I've got a little video on my phone of Hannah just pulling paints off my paint rack and shaking them and putting them back.
Yeah.
And it's just magic. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the only reason I say that, I've put that big preamble in there, or that big conversation, is just be wary of people being dismissive about things that are important to you. That's my point. And I'm not saying this has been the case for me, but parents, your parents, parents-in-law, partners, friends, people can be dismissive about your hobbies. Well, you've got to take life seriously. You've got responsibilities now. You've got children. Yes, you do. But you also need to look after yourself. Really important to be the best person you can be. This is very important.
Yeah, I had a real low moment one Christmas. Where one of the members of my family told me I needed to grow up because of the things I'd got for Christmas, which were hobby related. And I just spent a very, very difficult shift on ED with a very, very bad trauma that I'm not going to repeat the details here because it was just horrendous. And it hit me in the gut, that comment, because it felt like this hobby is how I deal with all of that. And no one has any right to tell you otherwise, that it's not growing up or whatever it is, because it's nonsense. How you deal with things is really important. And for me, it was this hobby, and it still is. So you're absolutely right there, Dan. I think you be wary of the people who tell you otherwise. But I think one of the caveats before we really get stuck into this is that Dan and I are nowhere near experts on this. I wouldn't.
No.
We're still novice.
No.
And I don't think you will ever come across anyone it is. And a lot about what we're talking about or going to talk about has come from the fantastic influx of messages and comments that we've had when we've asked other hobby parents about how they cope and deal with things. And I think we were going to start with just a little run through of how we deal with things, or how or how I've approached things up, and then Dan give his thoughts too. And then what we're going to do is run through some of those comments and pick out some of the gold dust that's in there, because it's just fantastic. Hopefully it shouldn't take us too long, but the first one, to start off with, I think the first thing, the best piece of advice is managing expectations is such a key part of it, and understanding around that you don't know how much free time you used to have until you become a parent. And that's ridiculous. But sort of understanding that is possible, and sort of working out how you're going to compromise on things and work things out so that you can fit the most into your day is really, really important. And I think having communication with your partner about how you're going to fit things into the day and when would be an appropriate time to do it, and having a two-way dialogue on that, important. And also, working out how to give them the time to do their hobby, because it's always a two-way street with these kind of things. And Joe and I have had a back and forward we always regularly sit down and talk about it. And we've actually got to the stage where we'd actually sit down once a week now and plan the week to make sure that we fit everything that we want to fit in, because it otherwise we don't, and we become really ineffective, and we don't get the stuff that we want to do done, and that makes me grumpy and it makes her grumpy, and and like Dan said, I'm a much better person to be around if I've been able to unwind, and I think a lot of people are the same. And I think you also need to sort of think about what realistically do you think is going to be practical. So tipping all of your scenery bits onto the kitchen table and having a mass Necromunda building session may not be, or might be a brilliant idea, but may not be the best idea you've ever had, because you might just end up getting, creating a god awful mess, and manage the kids in that environment would just potentially be a nightmare. But equally, it could be a really awesome thing to do. So sort of thinking about what you can and can't fit around stuff is... So my next thing I've written down here is just a straight out steal from Joe Wicks and his food planning. You've got to plan like an absolute boss. You've got to get your stuff organised, know what you're going to be working on, particularly with newborns, and have it ready to grab. So if you're lucky enough to have a hobby area, and Dan and I are really lucky enough to have that, the little part of a room set aside or whatever, having something so that if you get even 10 minutes, if you're in the right frame of mind, you can sit down and do a little bit of extra painting, and then you can go back to do something else. I think that's really awesome advice, and that's come up time and time again from people who have contacted us, that you just have something ready to do, have it there ready to go, because you may not get as much time to do it in a block, but if you get all the little bits together, you can find time to do stuff. The other thing that my thoughts was to be really, really flexible. Get ready to do stuff at a drop of a hat, and also get ready not to do stuff at a drop of a hat. So I would say work out when the best time is to do something. So if your project is to get the airbrush out, I personally find the airbrush a really difficult thing to just put down. I don't know about you, Dan, but it's not an easy thing to just drop tools and go and do something.
Honestly,
so
mate,
I choose the times.
There is nothing that enrages me more, and I need to, you have to be a bit humble and self-reflective at times and think, if this is the case, was it wise to do that? But like, I'll be doing some hobby, usually the airbrush, and Harriet will come home, and immediately she wants me there to help with the kids. And I'm like, you can't just drop you can't just stop. It doesn't work that way. And I'll get really like, and then later on, this is the way my brain works and the cycles are, I'll realize that actually I knew full well when she was coming home, so I shouldn't have started it in the first place. Yeah. So, I mean, planning what you're going to do so you can be flexible at the right time, I think is a really good one too. And the last thing I would say is something that it has come up in lots of comments that people have sent as well, particularly a great message that we got sent on Facebook that we'll cover and think about. But killing birds with two birds with one stone. So when Tristan was a little baby, he, for the first month, he refused to sleep. For the first week and a half, absolutely refused at any time to sleep other than on my chest. So he would lie on my chest and fall asleep. If I fell asleep, he would wake up, which was great. And so I ended up sitting there for the first night, like with this strange creature on my chest that I had very little idea of what to do with. But every time I fell asleep, he would scream at me. So I was sat there like wide awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, having been up for the best part of 24 hours, thinking there has to be some way I can make this time productive other than watching the television. As it happens, he didn't wake up if I put the PlayStation on and played Skyrim.
So I smashed through 125 hours of Skyrim in the first week while he was sleeping on my chest. So now Skyrim isn't a hobby, but there's loads and loads of different ways to engage with this hobby. So audiobooks, computer games, loads of things. Watching painting tutorials on television, you're watching battle reports. There's plenty of hobby you can be doing, or even zooming in with your friends for a hobby session and having the kid on your chest, asleep, and talking to people about their hobby is another way of getting your hobby fix, as it were, while having the kid around. So killing two birds with one stone is, and look for those opportunities, because for example, you can supervise a baby and paint at the same time. That is possible, in the right circumstances, if you work it out.
But be careful, because kids adapt. And so I learnt in quite a messy way.
They're like the Borg, aren't they?
They are. I learnt in quite a messy way that don't try and do your own hobby while you're trying to engage the kids in doing their hobby or doing some hobby.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's Look. So true.
Come here.
I want to be sleep with you.
Oh, okay. So this is very apt, ladies and gents. So it's what time is it? 10:30 at night. And Joshua's just come in to my room, and he wants a cuddle, and he's told me I need to go to bed because he wants to snuggle up in bed. So be ready to adapt. You all right, buddy? Yeah. Should we go and help you? Come on then. We'll pause a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so you'll be glad to know Joshua's now settled back upstairs with Mum. Well, not back up, he's gone upstairs now with Mum. So there you go. It's all about being flexible, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But yes, you can't.
Absolutely.
Don't try and do your hobby and have them doing hobby. So I had Joshua paint some models.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't do yours. Just don't bother. But interestingly, though, so there's nothing wrong with a bit of like you were saying about two birds with one. So one of the things. So Joshua is quite an active kid, and he can be a bit crazy, and so sometimes he gets a bit tired, and the best thing for him is he sits down on the sofa and we watch like Paw Patrol together or something. And then I was thinking, well, this is nice. I like sitting on the sofa with Josh, but I could be doing something. So actually, what he loves doing is we'll come upstairs to my hobby room, and I'll sit at the desk, and he'll sit next to me, and he'll have the iPad and watch an episode or two of Paw Patrol, and I'll do some hobby, and he talks and we chat about. He'll say to me, "Oh, what are you doing, Daddy?" And I'll tell him about it, and then talk about Paw Patrol. And now, importantly, you can't just do that for ages and ages, because well, it depends. You don't let people tell you how to parent is another one, but you don't want them just sat watching screen all the time. But what I found is it's really good daddy Joshua time. Like he engages with me and enjoys it, and I enjoy it. And then we go off and do something else and run around the garden or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So shall we go through some of the awesome comments that we've had?
Yes.
Because I think there's some great stuff in here that I think would be worth going through. So the first one is, and it's a huge thank you to David Hardy. Unfortunately, we didn't catch this message when it came in, because Facebook Messenger, when you have a page, is bizarre, and you can get lost in the forest of messages. But He's got some great ideas. So he talks a lot about what we've just talked about planning and compromising and working out time with your partner to fit things in around. So he talks about when he gets up with the kids early in the morning, and then they're kind of settled again. He uses that time to hobby and do some painting, but also he takes things like sprues in his car for his job. He drives between jobs, and if he gets 10 minutes in the car, he'll assemble a model, which is quite a great idea. And also, I think one of the key pieces of advice he gives is about sleeping. And working out when you can sleep and they can sleep, and planning around that, and that's great advice, because it's really important to manage your own health too. So don't think, oh great, baby's asleep, I'm a hobby, because sometimes when baby's asleep is the only time you're going to get to sleep. So bear that in mind. One of the he also talks as well about having stuff ready to go straight away. Absolutely agree, Dave. We think that's so important, having it all set up and ready. And just talks about how awesome it is to be a parent, which it's just lovely to read that kind of stuff. So thanks, Dave. We appreciate that message. It's really thorough. And we're going to summarize. One of the things we can hope to come out of this is an article about dadhammering, advice in from lots of different people, which I hope people will find useful. So you've had a read of his comment, Dad. Is there anything that's like I've missed, because it's really long and we have missed something? Grab yourself a tree tray so you can build minis when you're chilling with your partner in front of the telly. Yes. That's such a good one. Done that. Built most of my Lord of the Rings stuff doing that.
Yeah.
Yes. So Brohammer Mini sent us a great comment. Batch cooking your food, so you're saving time in that kind of respect, so that you've got more time to do the other stuff. Absolutely great advice. And he's so right. Getting your food prepped, getting things ready to go, so that batch paint your food. That sounds ridiculous, but it makes a lot of sense actually. So batch paint your food, and then this piece of advice, I always think about kids in the sort of junior sense of the word, so like babies, I suppose, because that's when most of the dad hammering I've done has come out. But Chris on Twitter has said that some kids really don't handle the competitive aspect of games very well at all. So focus on narrative stuff. So you're telling a story. I think that's superb advice, Dan, because the few times I've played with Tristan, he's got really agitated when he thought his models were going to die. He was a bit young at the time. It was about 5, I think. So I think that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah.
Like that was one that as soon as I read, I thought, you know what, that's true. And that follows on to some of the other comments that we've had, like on the Dadhammer support network, which we're going to shout. This is the shout out for them. It's a Facebook page, and also a hashtag on Twitter, hashtag Dadhammer, and the page is Dadhammer Support Network on Facebook. And one of the pieces of advice on there is, you don't have to get your kids to paint. If painting isn't their bag, you can just play with them. And if playing with them isn't their bag, you can paint with them. And they don't have to do either. You can do your hobby in the same room as they're doing their hobby, which I thought was fantastic advice too. Really, really good advice, because and this comes from Mark on Facebook. He said, my kids prefer to play on the computer, which we now do in the same room while I paint, which is nice because we enjoy our hobbies together and we talk constantly, sharing fun stories about them. I think that's brilliant. I think that's really fantastic advice. Is that, the kids will gravitate if you make it enjoyable, and if you force it down their throat, I don't think that's the way to do it. I think it has to be led by them. And equally, it's your hobby. It's not their hobby until they want it to be their hobby. So doing the hobby, my kids are obsessed with Pokemon cards at the moment. So I'm actually really thinking about clearing a space for them to do their Pokemon cards in with me while I'm hobbying, because I think that would be awesome. So yeah, that's I think that's great advice. So thanks for that, Mark. What else have we got here? Yeah, so again, reiterating the point, Dick on Facebook says that it's really awesome to get like a place sorted out so you can get stuck straight in when you get a chance. I think that's great. One of the comments on here from Michael I really liked about his new partner had 2 boys, and they were absolutely like blown away by the hobby. Right up until a point they realised that they had to paint them. They thought they came in the box like that, which was interesting. Putting away projects or keeping them out of reach of kids comes up a few times. So Paul Allen, one of our regular listeners, has said that putting everything away and focusing on a single project it helps him to consolidate his time productively. But also, I take that out of that, putting stuff away or having a door is so important, because I had an episode. In fact, there's a video on YouTube if you want to see my expression of how painful it was, where I had virtually finished a squad of Longfangs only for my daughter to paint them red, which was painful. So yeah, beware. And beware silence. Beware silence. If there's silence, something is happening.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's no telly noises. There's no sign of a tablet on, and there's no noise. Someone is painting your models. Yeah.
I think Paul makes a good point there about focus as well.
Yes. Yeah, it really is important, isn't it? Like setting a clear objective. I think I'm going to paint this squad, and then I'm going to move on to that squad,
and then putting away all the other stuff that's distracting.
Yeah. And like Dan on Facebook also sort of goes back to what we're saying. It's okay if you don't have time with newborns to do the hobby. It'll come back as they get older, and you can stay engaged with other things like books, audiobooks, etc., and save the time with the kids. This goes to be about balancing it and managing expectations, and sometimes there will just be times where you just can't, and finding other ways to stay engaged with the hobby is super important, I think. Particularly the people, because I think our relationship is a perfect example. We met in the hobby, working in Games Workshop, and we've been best mates ever since. And this podcast and my friendship with you is a massive part of my life. And the friends that you make in this hobby, most of my friends, realistically, are to do with this hobby or reenactment, one of the two. They're all hobby related. As time goes by, and now I'm settled into rather than moving around from ward to ward, I'm now creating longer term relationships with people I work with. But realistically, the ones that stuck over time is the hobby. So remember that those things are a huge part too. If you've been in the hobby as long as I have, 30 years, which is painful, you think about it for that. It does become a huge part of your life, and talking to the people who are in those hobbies, just because you can't go down to Vets Night, for example, and play, or wherever you play your games, engaging with the people who are. And a good example from tonight, Ross, one of the chaps who turns up, does painting night with me every week, comes over to my house, really good mate of mine. He's just been in a competition, and he's telling us all about it on Messenger this evening. And staying engaged with people who are able to go out and do that kind of stuff is really, I think, really key. Social distance gaming tournaments, gotta love it. Is there anything else through this lot that you've picked up? I love this one. I'm going to read this one out, actually. Never paint with your kids. Dad, I need yellow, Dad. I need pink, Dad. I need gold, Dad. I need silver, Dad. I need black, no brown, no silver. Dad, Dad, Dad. Can I just finish paraming one model, please? Can I watch Justin's house? What? Oh, I thought you wanted silver. Yeah. Oh, yes. No, I need blue, dark blue. Oh.
Yeah, that's true. Rob from Curtin said something which we've brought up before, which is if kids are interested, go on to Amazon or what have you, or other local store, and buy like a massive bag of plastic cheap soldiers or animals or dinosaurs or something like that, and spray them up for them. I've actually got a drawer. One of my Hobby Zone drawers is just full of undercoated plastic green army men, so that if Joshy wants to do some painting, or Hannah at some point when she's can hold a brush and not eat it, they can just, I've got some ready to go. Because it just makes sense. Something I wanted to say as well, to go back to what you were saying about relationships in hobby and things. And this is quite poignant because Ben and I were literally discussing this a couple of days ago, about, maintaining relationships, like friendships and stuff, and
long distance ones particularly.
Don't beat yourself up because you can't be involved at a certain point. Like, funnily enough, Ben said to me once, a true friendship because you cannot see someone for a long period of time, and when you see them, it's like you just saw them yesterday. And I think that's really important. It's really important because it can be really tough, that you don't get to see people, and you can feel a bit like you've let them down as well. Beat yourself up a bit, but being a parent is really hard. It's great. It's flipping awesome, but it's also really hard. So give yourself a break and have a Kit Kat, because you're doing a bloody brilliant job. There's my little bit of moment there. So something else I wanted to add, because it's been going around in my head, is we talked about like what are your partner's hobbies, but talk to them about what helps them regenerate, whatever that may be, and how they feel you are caring about them. So then they'll be more inclined to care about you and help you, I suppose, because it's just the nice thing to do. So the example I give, so Harriet really likes quality time together. So like if we're watching the telly, for example, if I'm sat on my phone looking at hobby or whatever, that doesn't count because she likes that. Yeah. So I, now following on really from your example, Ben, Friday night, Harriet and I sit down and watch something, and it's just us watching a film or whatever. No phones, no nothing. Try and put them to one side. And like you mentioned about sitting there doing some hobby, and that's fine, but then don't expect to turn around and say, well, yeah, but I spent some time with you, because you were doing something else. And because if you, and this is getting a bit like into relationships now, but I naturally show affection by like going and buying flowers, big bunch of flowers or something, because I know that I'd be really happy if someone bought me a box of Space Marines. But actually, it's more valuable to Harriet that I spend some time with her. So don't go. You find out what it is you can do to make your partner feel valued, so that then they'll help you in the reverse as well. I think that's a bit deep now, getting a bit deep, but it's just mad. It's just mad. Life is flipping mad.
No.
And trying to fit it all in and balance it all. It's just like, it's loopy. And I do go back to, like, we said it right at the beginning. If any of you are listening, and well done for listening if you haven't got kids, for putting up with this rambling, but if you haven't got children or aren't in a relationship and you know, it paint some bloody models, because believe me, you do not know.
Yeah.
You do not know how much time you have. I remember just, oh my gosh, whole days just sat watching Star Trek Voyager with Dan Wasley, and I could have painted miniatures, and yeah, oh my goodness, those were good times, mind. But we made a toad in a hole once that was so big we had to, like, bake a separate tin of just the batter because we'd made too much. It was great.
Yeah, amazing. I think what you're talking about, you know, when it comes down to it, understanding what it is that makes your partner feel appreciated is super important in all this, because you know, we've talked about lots of things, but efficiency and planning are actually really, I think, to being successful in fitting it all in, are really key. And a lot of that is understanding what it is you need to do, because sometimes, you know, a really good example, I suppose, actually comes down to my job. So one of the things that we get taught is ICE. So ideas, concerns, and expectations. So when a patient comes in and talks to us, part of our consultation is to find out what are their ideas about what's going on, what are their concerns about what's going on, and what is their expectation from coming to see you. Because sometimes it's very easy to go off on one and do a whole bunch of things that may or may not be important, but you haven't actually addressed what it is that they were concerned about and what their expectations were from having that conversation with you. And if you haven't done that, then you kind of you've not achieved what it is that they wanted out of talking to you. And I think I take that into life a lot. You know, when I'm doing this or anything with somebody else, what are their expectations out of doing it? And
Ben, sorry. We're back. Just to make you aware, I've just had to leap out again because the other child woke up.
I've lost track of where we were as well.
You were talking about ice.
Expectations, yeah.
And the fact that you could just chuck it in some whiskey and, hey.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think being efficient, having an understanding of what your expectation is for the hobby, having an understanding what you can efficiently do to make everything work better, it makes a big difference. You know, I think yours is a really good example. You could buy flowers for your missus every day, but if that's not what my wife uses the term love language, if that's not her love language, then it doesn't matter to them. But if time is their love language, it's golden. And actually, I think that's a really good thing, because I think that's just mixing it all together and working out how to efficiently do things. I think is my top things. Planning like a boss.
I think Joe Wicks is likely to come after you for use of copyright.
I don't think so. I mean, so one of the things I'm going to talk about planning, what I'd like at the moment, I'm finding it really, really hard to, in the space I'm in, to have things set up ready for the kids to do when they come in, which they regularly do and say, "Oh, can I paint something?" I normally find that that's right in the middle of when I'm painting something, And I normally find that's really difficult for me to then put everything that I've got away and get them involved too. I also, when it comes to painting, I think I need to manage my expectations of how kids should paint.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge part of me who's like, in my head, Tristan can understand the nuances of every Pokemon in existence and tell me how they work and interact and blah, 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 blah. But how is it difficult then for him to paint in between the lines and start with a darker color and move up to the light? But it is, because, it's so easy to forget where we came from as hobbyists, how difficult our first models were. And to get over it, I now have one of my earliest models on the shelf in front of me, like as old as I could find, just to remind me that the dude's 9. The best thing for him is to just sit him down with a brush and a bunch of paint and Dr. Cox that. Do you remember the first episode of Scrubs where Dr. Cox is just like, put the pea pot on the floor and just knock yourself out, just go for it, to the little kid because he wants a wee sample. Do the same with models. Just put the model in front of him, let him go for it, go mad, paint it whatever color they want. Green face is green face. If his skin's orange, doesn't matter. If he looks like a tomato, who cares? It's up to them. They love it. They've created something and it's brilliant. And those wonderful moments when, they say things like, "Oh, I'm just putting brown on it to look like mud."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
know what that's called, buddy? That's called weathering.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I feel the thing I'd like to finish with, I guess, apart from the fact of obviously, please get in touch if you've got thoughts, feelings, or you're struggling and you just want to reach out and talk to people, because we are definitely here for that if you need it.
100%.
Yeah. But I think there is no one size fits all. There isn't a handbook. No. And there are loads of books about parenting and all sorts, and they probably work for some people. But really, there isn't a handbook as such. As I say, there isn't one size fits all. Something that works this week probably won't work next week. It's just
that is so true
all the time,
because they're like the Borg and they adapt.
Are like the Borg and they adapt, absolutely. But there is room for hobby and a family, and actually it will enrich your hobby. It really will.
And can enrich your family.
So, it might be that everything you've heard us say doesn't ring true with you. That's okay. Some of it might ring true, but give yourself a break. You're doing an awesome job.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think one size fits all or one size doesn't fit all is like the best advice we could give today. Because I'm so keen on getting the planning right and being efficient, but that's because I know that in my life I'm the scruffiest painter in the universe. I practically give Dan a stroke when he looks at my hobby desk, because I've got paint pots everywhere and I've got 5 or 6 projects on my table and I'm an absolute mess. And I know that isn't the best thing for me in my hobby with the kids. I know if I just had one project on my desk ready to go that I could easily pack away so I could make room for the kids when they ask to paint, that would be better. I'm really bad at planning. I'm really, really bad at it. And it's the best advice I could give today, because I'm absolutely convinced that that's what would make my hobby better with kids and my hobby in itself better if I was better at planning. But, everyone will find a different way of doing things. It might be that having a mad old hobby desk with all sorts of stuff going on is exactly what you and your kids need. Like that can be the answer to your situation. And maybe you need to become less tidy. I don't know. And have it all out in one great big crazy mixing pot and seeing what comes out of it. But yeah, I really hope that people have, or anyone has got anything from this little ramble, because I know I would have appreciated hearing a lot of this when I first started. Just hearing from somebody else that it is hard and that everyone finds it hard, that it wasn't just me finding it hard to fit my hobby in. Because when Tristan was a baby, I sucked at it. I didn't do any hobby for years because I had Tristan and I had been a junior doctor and I just couldn't fit it in. But I had free time, even working like the 100-hour weeks I was working, I still had free time. And I know looking back, I had free time because I can find the things that I did in that time that were wasted. For example, playing on the PlayStation. I spent hours doing that because I could be in the same room with Tristan. But it's not wasted time because I was in the same room hanging out with Tristan and enjoying that time. But I could have equally have been doing my hobby in that time. But I was just so disorganized I didn't do it. So there you go.
Well, there we go. A deep and meaningful wild section.
Yeah, and one of the things I loved, absolutely so blown away by the amount of comments that people have sent to us and responded to our messages and posts, because there's loads of it out there, and we didn't cover all of it because there's so much of it. And it's been really cool to find things like the Dad Support Network on Facebook, the Dadhammer Support Network, because I think it's really cool that those things exist.
Definitely.
Really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us for episode 60. As always, we are on Facebook, although apparently if you message us, Facebook doesn't tell us. So that's great. But we're also on Instagram and Twitter. We do have a website. We do have some YouTube. So I haven't put anything on there in a while, but there are some funny videos if you fancy checking them out.
All of our episodes go on there.
All of our episodes do go on there. Yeah. So as ever, do get in touch. We love hearing from you guys. And we shall be back now in 4 weeks' time. I think it is just over 4 weeks, because we're going to have a bit of a break over the Christmas and come back. I think it's the 9th. Middle of January. I think it's the 13th of January. So the next episode is due.
And we'll be joined by
James.
By James from Siege Studios, which is going to be fab.
Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. Merry Christmas.
Oh, yeah. God. That came first.
It did indeed.
Oh, good riddance 2020.